And we are live. Jen, where are you? There you are. Can't hear you. Okay. We'll pull out for a minute. So, welcome, guys. It is Thursday night, Generational Change. I am Peter, and I'm flying solo for a minute. Hopefully, Jen will get her audio figured out. I am using my new super microphone, which you can't see because it's blurred out partially. Okay, Stephen, I will do that. And guys, welcome. If you haven't smashed the like button, please make sure that you do. Chris Garrett already on top of that. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys all had a happy new year. It is 2025, and it's certainly going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. Don't really know what to expect, to be honest. I'm hoping for the best. But as you know, most of the changes that we seek are going to come from outside of electoral politics. I think it's a pretty safe bet that that's the way it's going to go down. And so now, in terms of, a lot of the things that are going on, and those of you who were watching Status Quo earlier today, a lot more information has been coming out pertaining to what's going on with the, I guess what you would say, first, the overcharging on Luigi Mangione, which we're going to get to, but also, very important, we're also going to talk about what United Health has been doing in terms of this absolutely insane level of depravity that is required if you're going to run a for-profit health system. There is no two ways about it. This is a huge part of the problem that we are facing on a daily basis. Jenny, are we good? Nope, can't hear you. And so right now, when you look at what some of the real problems are, I think it's become such a catastrophic failure in so many ways that I just don't know how they're going to ever be able to defend the system ever again. We've reached the point of no return. I've been saying that for a long time. And yeah, it is a hellscape, Rhett's Trek, but let's not forget that usually when major change happens, it happens in kind of a big way. Can't hear you.
She's muted on StreamYard.
Oh, okay. Can you help with that, Colin?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. I'm so frustrated. That was like the biggest frigging buzzkill of the night. Like the whole thing was a buzzkill. I was so perfectly happy and high. Hello.
And now you're depressed and low.
Now I'm grumpy and surly. No, so I'm assuming you said, hi, everyone. Welcome. It's Thursday night, Generational Change. You're Peter.
I was prepared to do the show all by myself. I don't need you. What are you talking about?
You don't need me. You have your own show.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Generational Change, Thursday night. I'm here. I'm not queer, but I'm here.
I do think that commercial real estate is definitely going to see a lot of hits in a lot of different places. I think that is very much expected. That's also because a lot of the capitalist system that we're looking at today is completely overinflated in almost every corner possible. In fact, it probably is in every corner possible. So for those of you who are wondering why I'm wearing this wonderful fleece right now, I think for those of you who know that Notre Dame pulled off a major upset against the Bulldogs. Obviously, I'm very happy with that.
I take issue with Notre Dame.
Why do you take issue with the Catholic?
It bothers me. What did you call it?
So why do you take exception with the Catholics, Jen? What do you have?
It has nothing to do with the Catholics. My son went to Catholic high school. I went to a Catholic law school. I worked at a Catholic hospital. I have nothing with Catholics. I don't like Notre Dame. I don't like the fact that they have a giant statue of Moses with horns on their campus.
I didn't know that Moses was evil.
Yeah, well, it's as people know, like Jews have often had this stereotype of having horns. And I find that to be kind of icky, and it just bothers me.
You mean real?
That's not why I originally started disliking them. I mean, let's be real. I originally started disliking them when I was in college, and we went up against them in the Orange Bowl.
Oh, so the truth comes out. More like that.
I'm just saying.
If you think Notre Dame is bad, don't even go there with the Hurricanes. I mean, my God. Talk about the worst of the worst.
We do not like them. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of Notre Dame. And yes, I still did like Rudy.
Well,
How could you not like Rudy?
Well, that was one of the better moments when we were, on our podcast when we were helping spread the word for the SAG-AFTRA union drive.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough to get Rudy himself, Sean Astin, on the podcast.
He's so nice. Like I saw something recently, a clip of him at some event, and someone came up to him, and he is so genuinely a really nice guy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the special ones, and you don't get too many of them. And
Yeah.
that's why when we spoke, I lauded the fact that, I got into sports in many ways because of him.
Because you knew that you were like the unwanted runt that had to make it onto the team. Like, what are you?
I'm over 6 feet tall, so I don't think I would ever complain about that. So as far as I'm concerned, that had nothing to do with it.
It was the flat feet.
It's the flat. Yeah, definitely the flat feet. That's what it was. No, he was a very inspiring character, obviously, and he did an amazing job of conveying what that whole underdog story was like. Obviously the score was amazing as well.
Yeah.
It was just a really great story. It's a very inspirational movie. And yeah, it's definitely more of a guy's, kind of movie.
No, I really liked it. I liked Rudy.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really good job of like depicting the era. Like I thought it was really good.
They did. That was Jon Favreau's foray.
He was so big. I've forgotten how big. Like he was big.
And of course, it's amazing on the opposite end of the spectrum. That was also Vince Vaughn's foray, and he was so small. He was so thin at the time.
Yeah.
But it
then
really
Swingers came, and it was all downhill from there.
But I can remember being in 4th grade. I was, 8, 9 years old. And, the next thing you know, I'm asking my mom, hey, can we go out shopping and can I get some Notre Dame like sweatshirts and things like that?
Of course you did, Rudy.
I did.
I'm sure you did.
But of course, I never listen. There is no way in hell. My father, of course, would have supported it, but there's no way in hell my mother ever would have supported it going to Catholic University. But neither here nor there. I am a very proud Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I'm also a Rutgers fan as well. So those are my two teams. But yes, I'm very happy to see that Notre Dame. Hey, look.
I lost you when you were talking college ball because really, since I'm not like I followed it when I was in college. And that was the thing with Notre Dame then. But like I don't really follow college.
Well, one of the other reasons why I'm very happy that Notre Dame won is also because they beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, one thing that I get tired of in sports is when the same team wins over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And in college sports, it's really, really bad because you have these sort of recruiting advantages, especially in basketball and football where all the money is. And so the Bulldogs basically turned into the Alabama Crimson Tide or the Ohio State Buckeyes, which unfortunately Ohio State is still in it. And Ohio State will play the Texas Longhorns.
We're turning into a sports channel.
Well, just so you know, Ohio
I have
State,
a certain affinity for the Longhorns because I have a lot of friends from there.
Yes. Well, Ohio State will play the Texas Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl next week. So I think it's safe to say who you will be rooting for, as I will be.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I would say, it's funny because my father-in-law went to Ohio State. Actually, both my mother-in-law and my father-in-law went to Ohio State. But I have way too many friends in Texas.
I'm going to give an old.
Have somebody in Texas.
Well, I'm going to give an old high school acquaintance a shout out. Jason Evilsizer, he did it to me. He and his family, when I was in school, his family are legacied at Ohio State. And he would show up to school decked out in Ohio State, always talking. Of course, he went to Ohio State. Again,
they're Buckeyes, right?
Oh, yes. Oh,
see, now, but that I can also get behind because do you know what a Buckeye is, right?
It's like a rodent of some kind.
What is wrong with you? It's a type of cookie. There's a type of peanut butter ball cookie that's called a Buckeye, and they're called Buckeye cookies. They're very Midwestern-y, but yeah. And so, yeah, I appreciate a Buckeye cookie.
Yes. I'm sure they're delicious, but I still can't stand Ohio State. Ohio State or the U or any schools that do that type of stuff. Very, very annoying. So we are waiting on Zaid Jilani. I assume that he'll be here shortly. He had messaged a little earlier that he had a prior engagement that he was attending to.
Well, if there's something you want to talk about
Yes, there is something I want to talk about, Jen.
What would you like?
There is something I want to talk about.
What would you like to talk about, Donald James?
We first want to give kudos to Donald James again. Absolutely. As you guys know, our channel is growing, and we're very happy that
grow
you
with us. If you're new here, welcome. See how it picks up so much throughout. So like now we're almost twice as many people. So if you are new here, welcome to Thursday Night Generational Change. I'm Jen. That's Peter.
I'm Peter.
He's Peter. And normally we've been starting at this time, but we are going to be switching to 7 o'clock on Thursdays as soon as I felt bad, but I didn't realize, guys, Peter is no longer on Eastern Daylight Time. Peter is on Central Time, and I did not realize this. So yeah. See, my wife from Wisconsin made Buckeye cookie. Yes. And this is the thing. And as a person who grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, when my husband was doing residency and all the spouses would get together and do these cookie exchanges, it was like this extremely like shiksa thing that they did. And I loved it. Shiksa peel. And I loved it. And it was so cool. And every year without fail, somebody would make Buckeyes. It was really good.
Mm. Well, they certainly sound tempting. And even though I don't partake in too many sweets every once in a while.
They do have peanut butter in them. And I'm not necessarily a huge peanut butter fan, but I do like a Buckeye cookie.
Mm. Well, since our wonderful guest is here, I will save my rant for Mr. Pac-Man until the end.
Oh, God. You know what, though? People are going to just see, the problem is I think it just makes you look bad, like you are obsessed with David Pac-Man.
I don't like him. And I don't like what he represents. And I think people have a right to speak out against people that clearly, and this is the thing, we don't know who he's connected to, just like we don't know who Ben Shapiro is connected to, but we know that they have an inside track to whatever is facilitating their very lavish lifestyle doing work as podcasters. So as far as I'm concerned, it is imperative that we speak up about this, because our goal of transforming politics into service is to platform individuals who are actual journalists, who are actual on-the-ground reporters, who are actually covering the issues. No, that's not true. We have a much better guest, I can assure you. Pac-Man wouldn't last 5 minutes here anyway.
He won't respond to texts anyway. He's douchey that way. He's too big for his britches.
A lot of people are too big for their britches, but we are very grateful that we do have a guest this evening who appreciates journalism, because that's what he does. And if you aren't currently subscribed to the American Saga, make sure that you do. He is also an alumni of The Intercept. We've had a few of them on our show, and we will continue to have them, because what the heck is our crumbling empire without real journalists trying to protect our free speech amendment that just seems to be dissipating every day. But without further ado, we appreciate his work and we appreciate him being here. Zaid Jilani, welcome to Generational Change.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's really good. I always see your stuff, Jen, so it's good to see you in person.
Well, I wish I could take credit, but, since you're new here, I'll tell you, I have not been on social media in years. Peter handles the social media.
With your guidance.
Well, we've been working together for 5 years. Like, we know our issues. We're on the same page with that. Sure. Usually, every once in a while, I say something like, I can't believe you said that, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I got better at it once we were very critical. We got very specific about what we should and should not be talking about.
Exactly.
Zaid, we couldn't have picked a better time for you to come on here. Obviously, there is going to be a million and one directions that people are going to take the two attacks from last night. Jen, you already have been very vocal about what you think is actually going on, that this could very well be a false flag type of situation. The fact that the two men who apparently committed one crime in New Orleans, the other in Las Vegas, were both at Fort Bragg together. This kind of seeps into a lot of different territories in terms of, going down the so-called conspiratorial rabbit hole. But the way I look at it, if we are standing on the precipice of World War III and Israel is continuing to get away with what they're getting away with, and then you see the responses on social media today, especially from the likes of Stephen Miller, it only makes us think more and more that this is just a way to continue to prolong the activities that Israel is perpetrating on the Palestinian people. When you find the ISIS flag, it reeks of, false flag type of behavior, but would love to hear your thoughts on what's actually going on.
Yeah. So where do you guys want to start? Because we have a number of topics, right, on the deck.
Yeah. Well, we do have some footage, and obviously we heard about what the mayor had to say. Actually, I haven't really listened to it. I don't know if you have, Jen. Have you heard?
I haven't seen an update. I've been trying, like, it's hard for me because I want to yell at them when I hear these things. So I haven't seen other than what Jordan had said about it.
All right, well, let's play this clip. This is the mayor of New Orleans addressing what happened.
To change just after 9/11. I remember a time when I could run from my car to the gate to catch a flight. After 9/11, we realized we need to do things very, very differently so that we can all arrive at our destination safely. I think you're going to see a lot of things change in the city of New Orleans. And actually, I think you're going to see a lot of things change in this country in terms of how we handle large-scale events, where there is pedestrian access and where vehicles are allowed. I think you're going to see things change in terms of the level of surveillance that we have in this country. We've pushed back against some of that, but when you look at places like the UK and other European places where CCTV is very commonplace and used proactively so that it can look for signs or indications of an attack, I think you're going to start seeing those things in this city because I'm going to be pushing for them, and you're going to probably see them in a lot of other places that are destination cities like the city of New Orleans.
I just feel angry. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there is, after events like this, there's a lot of kind of knee-jerk responses or knee-jerk reactions, right? Like, you guys remember, I don't know how old you guys are, but like
I'm
in
old.
The early 90s or in the 80s, there were some instances where a relative poisoned a kid with Halloween candy, right? So it's someone who knew someone else doing it to them, right? Like, it was bad news. But then what happened afterwards is some towns got really spooked that strangers are doing this and that should kids really be trick-or-treating? Is the candy safe? And there were entire towns that said, we're not going to have trick-or-treating this year, right? We're not going to have our kids going out. So there were a bunch of parts of America where people were like, we're not going to trick-or-treat anymore. It was all over the news. Everyone was scared. And really, I don't think there were ever any incidents of dangerous, poisonous Halloween candy going out just from strangers. I think the closest thing, like I said, was I think there was some relative who did it on purpose to one of their relatives. But you know, the point is that knee-jerk reaction is a very American thing, right? And often it happens, I think, when people have a preconceived agenda, right? There's some people who wanted certain policies put in place regardless of what would have happened, and they see an event like this and they're saying, well, we have to do it. You know, some of the Trump administration officials, well, it's not, the administration isn't there yet, but the transition officials have already said, well, you know, these incidents prove we got to get tougher on the border. But what relationship do they even have to the border, right? I mean, I believe the guy in Las Vegas and the guy in New Orleans, both Americans, they're born here. They serve in the military, right? Like they have the background of a kind of an all-American background, right? In terms of the suspects that we have. And yet there is no, there's no evidence or any relationship to the border whatsoever. And yet people who already have an agenda around the border are already talking about it. And then you just saw, you know, the clip from what you all played, people who have an agenda around wanting more surveillance, you know, more profiling, more, security have already put that into place. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have a reasonable conversation about how to respond to the incidents like this. But the knee-jerk reaction is a very, very strong pull in America always when these sort of things happen.
Yeah, it's terrifying because everybody now, and I always waver somewhere between powers that be taking advantage of it and powers that be creating it. I'm somewhere in there in a combination thereof. There's something very convenient about this. They're not addressing the fact, and I did hear something about that they had all their barricades or stockpiled over at the Dome because of the Super Bowl coming up, and so that they really didn't have adequate barricades on certain streets. So that could be one easier solution, but no, this will pose an opportunity to further create consent for things like cop cities all over the place, which are opening up, which is terrifying also. And this is just one more thing. And I also think it manufactures more consent against, it just perpetuates Islamophobia. I mean, it just, like, let's just throw that in there. That's what makes me feel like it's so created. But the other issue is it's something that not only manufacturers consent for what's going on in places like Syria and Lebanon, but I feel like it's perfectly distracting from the Luigi Mangione case and people getting like sort of, realizing universally that we have some issues here. And you started hearing people talking about this and CEOs getting nervous and now all of a sudden there's a whole new villain and a whole new thing. And I don't know. I just find it all very convenient.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that like I said, was that old quote Rahm Emanuel used to use? He used this after a financial crisis. He's like, don't let a crisis go to waste, right? I think there's always people with preconceived agendas looking for events where they feel like they can push through whatever they want to do. Whether there's people doing surrounding immigration, surveillance, foreign policy, the border, so on and so forth. There's always going to be, I think, people looking to take advantage of events like this and incidents like this, even when, let's be honest, in a country of 320 million people, with plenty of people who have unmet mental health needs, who have very easy access to firearms or explosives, there's always, unfortunately, going to be someone who has the capability to do this. For instance, in the Las Vegas incident where a guy blew up his Cybertruck outside of a Trump, building and hotel, apparently he was a big Trump fan. There was some reporting now, right? Like he actually really likes Trump. And like, why would he do that? Well, there's certain people who have problems and their needs are unmet and they lose their minds. And I imagine it could have just been a very flamboyant suicide for him, right? Some very eye-catching, the whole world is seeing that explosion. It may not be any more complicated than that. And yet when people see those incidents, they try to exploit them and say, well, this proves why we have to do X, Y, and Z. And of course, those things that they want to do are things that we might be hesitant to do or resistant to do, right? And in the absence of those events. So, yeah, I mean, I think that is a constant kind of pull on the American people, pull in terms of these crisis events. But I will say one thing. I think because information is a little more democratized, country is a little more polarized, I don't know. I don't know if it'll work, right? Like, I don't know if kind of taking advantage of a crisis works as much as it used to. Just because people aren't quite necessarily all united on one team. They're not all united behind one flow of information, right? Like programs like this, people offer a different point of view about these events, right? And so I think it may find less success than some of these people expect.
Well, I do think that we are in a very unique period right now. And, the whole thing about Mangione is that it kind of just opened up Pandora's box. And now a lot of people are looking at the system for what it really is, which is late stage capitalism. And you would think if we've gotten to this point and it's pretty obvious that, the powers that be are aware of, just how restless the masses are, you would think that they would be at least somewhat cognizant of trying to change course. But not only are they not changing course, they are doubling and tripling down on the current course. I mean, I feel like things are going to come to a head if they're not already. I mean, who's to say if, let's say this guy, I think his name was McLaughlin, or McHugh, Hughes, that did the job out in Vegas. He's a big Trump supporter. But everything that's been going on for the past few days, particularly with Elon and Vivek and the statements that they've been making pertaining to the H-1B visas, and then really digging deep into what the intentions really are, which in many ways is just to line their pockets even deeper by, bringing in people that are going to work for a certain amount of money, et cetera. And you kind of get like the whole MAGA movement really up in arms thinking, well, wait a minute, I thought that you guys were, coming to help us. I thought that we were going to change the economic philosophy in this country, that we were going to have a living wage in their terms. But it does seem to me that the entire system is kind of cratering in a lot of ways because there isn't anybody with a certain degree of power who is saying, all right, I think it's time we pull back. We have to recognize that we've maybe gone a little too far. Instead, they are going full steam ahead. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Mangione incident is also interesting because I think after that happened, there was also kind of an attempt by various people to take it in different ways, right? Like some people were describing, the event as a terrorist attack that, also needed its own security, right? I think there was the governor of New York assembled, many business leaders and tried to assure them that, their security was assured and so on and so forth. And while I think other people started looking at the healthcare system itself, right, and saying like, well, why would someone do something like this? Why is there that anger out there about issues like this and what happened here? So, I mean, I don't know. It seemed like it fizzled out a little bit, and that goes back to the news environment that I was talking about earlier. I don't think we're also plugged into like 3 television stations like in the old days, or we're kind of seeing the same story every day. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these events that occurred this week with the with the car attack and the bombing outside the Trump building in Las Vegas, I wouldn't be surprised if those events kind of passed in the news in a week. In a week, we're talking about something completely different, right? Just because of the news cycles and the way they work now and the way information flows go. But I do think there will be some question marks though about how like the new administration tackles these things, right? Because that creates its own news, right? That creates its own momentum, right, in terms of how they decide to implement policies in response to things like this.
Yeah, and they'll go with crackdown on all of our civil liberties. That's what they're going. I mean, that's how this works. And as I've been to Cop City in Atlanta, and I've seen what like the intent is and what they're trying to do. And there's like more than 100 of these, from my understanding, all over the country. So it's instead of saying let's readdress our complete wealth inequality and the fact that we're like robber barons and maybe throw them some more than crumbs, it's no. Let's double down on things like surveillance and militarized law enforcement, and we'll just keep them out. So it's like I always have this thought, like they think they can just keep building wider and wider moats. And I don't think that that's ultimately that works. Like at some point it just stops working.
Yeah, well, look, I think we brought this up earlier, and they were ultimately going back to the border, right? And even after all the facts were clear, they were still doing that when the events of this week really didn't have anything to do with U.S.-Mexico border or the U.S.-Canadian border for that matter. And okay, they have an agenda around that. They've had it for a long time. People around Trump like Stephen Miller or Homan, the real immigration hardliners had that agenda, right? But it doesn't really relate to the things that are happening right now. But I think you're right when you suggest they're going to pursue it regardless, right? Because it's a pre-existing agenda. It's not really an agenda that's relative or relevant to current events. Is it going to blow up in their face though, right? Like I feel like in the first term of Trump, they came in also on immigration hardline agenda, but they ended up doing things that I think they didn't realize would create a huge public backlash. One of the things they did was try to basically make it a felony to come into the country unauthorized, which means that not only, it's not just a matter of being deported, you'll be arrested, right? And when you arrest a parent, you separate them from the child. And, there were certain Trump administration staff like Stephen Miller who found that to be unacceptable. Not only did they find it to be acceptable, I think they actually found it maybe to be favorable, right? They thought, okay, that's really going to stop people from coming if we just arrest the dad or the mom and the families get broken up, right? But then they even lost track of some of the children. I think there was a lot of public outrage, and appropriately, they ended up, pulling that back a little bit. So the question for me, like, is did they learn anything from their first term? Like, or are they just going to try to push as hard as they can at the beginning and end up running headfirst into the exact same obstacles? Because, the reality is I think Americans were upset about some of the chaos with the border, but we also have kind of a mild temperament when it comes to how we treat people, right? We don't want people treated really unjustly or inhumanely. And I think some of the Trump officials just discarded that in the first term. They didn't think it would matter. It ended up mattering quite a bit, right? It shifted public opinion against them very strongly, and eventually shifted their policies. So, yeah, I don't know if they're going to try. I have a feeling they will at least try at the beginning to be more hardline. I don't know if they're going to be cognizant, though, of the impacts of their policies and how they're going to be interpreted by the public this time in ways that they weren't in the first term.
And to be honest, I don't think they care. These are not people that are looking to get reelected at all this time. So if they didn't care before, they're definitely not going to care now. But I do think of Trump as a wild card. And we've said this before, like to some extent, I do think he likes to be liked. He thinks he's a swell guy, right? Like he likes to be liked. He likes to be friends with everybody and whatever. So,
right.
There's an opportunity to just be the right person in his ear at the right time. And he does the right thing for whatever reason, right? Like, I feel like there's that opportunity
I
there.
think you're right. We've seen this recent debate between Elon Musk and the users of his website on Twitter /X, where Elon has been advocating for, more high-skilled immigration, more H-1B visas, similar programs. Many of his users of his website do not like that. But I think when Trump was asked about it, he kind of took Elon's side. And I think part of the reason he took Elon's side is because a lot of the people who hire people in the United States, like Fortune 500 companies, Silicon Valley, IT, they agree with Elon on this matter, right? And I think Trump really wants the respect of powerful people, or of people who matter in some way in his mind, right? And so if they're all leaning on him in this direction, I think you're absolutely right. He wants to please them. He doesn't, that old line from Franklin Roosevelt, I welcome your hatred, right? That's how he was talking about elite actors who didn't like him, who didn't like the New Deal and what he was doing. I don't think Trump really has an attitude. He's willing to fight people if he feels like they're fighting him. But if really powerful people are willing to make deals with him and, kind of kiss up to him, if he does certain things, I think he's more than happy to make an arrangement with them, right? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. His ego is really a soft spot. And I think not only is that true domestically, I think around the world, leaders are sending him very nice letters. There are very few disputes, right? As soon as Trump started trash talking Canada and Mexico a little bit, Trudeau flew down to Florida and talked to him. Steinbaum of Mexico is a progressive leader, called him on the phone. They talked. I think every leader in the world by this time, because we've already seen Trump be president for 4 years, they all know how to deal with him. And the way to deal with him is to stroke his ego. And then he likes that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is why I think that this relation, Peter and I were talking about this before, I actually think that this relationship between Musk and Trump will be very short-lived. These are two very small men with very big egos and very thin skin. I don't see how that is going to be and they're both very transactional. So I don't see how this can go on for very long. There'll be one little thing and it'll just be all over. This won't end well. This is what, if this were personal life, I would foresee this breakup coming a mile away.
Do you have that wonderful graphic that you can put up?
Oh, what are we going to be? What are we talking?
Well, the emasculated billionaire class.
We think we should do the Tales of the Oligarchy.
It's just too good. I mean, it just kind of really speaks to what's going on right now. And we know that there's people who think that all billionaires, they're not all as bad. Well, some are worse than others for sure. There's no question. But they all kind of follow a very similar trajectory. And this whole idea of, by the way,
tales of emasculated men vying to destroy the world.
So apparently Bezos just got married on Kevin Costner's ranch in Montana or something. And the entire cost of the wedding was $500 million. How is this even conceivable? It gets to the point where, the average person hears about this type of excess and you're thinking you don't have enough to rub, 2 cents together in many ways. It is sort of inevitable that the system's going to break.
Well, they're shocked when people get shot then.
Yeah, well, that's what's making it even more interesting is that their way of dealing with it is to not change, but to just build more walls and hire more people with guns. That, they think that's the solution. And as history has shown forever, whether it was the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, and now our empire, it's all going to repeat the same pattern. It does seem like that. I mean, it is kind of scary that there isn't anyone telling them, yeah, the people are getting kind of restless out there. Maybe it's time to change. But what I also think is the problem is if you pull one, peg out, so to speak, the entire thing could collapse on itself. That's what you probably discovered through some of your research that we discovered as well, is that the top shareholders in United Health are the top 3 private equity giants in the country, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock. And so if you were to pull that leg out, it's the whole table's going to topple over because all of these things are interconnected, whether it is real estate, whether it is healthcare, or whether it is immigration. All of these things are intersected in some way, shape, or form. And, like you say, Jen, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
I just looked up Bezos' new wife, and I've got to say, she has the crazy look. Sorry, she does. She has the crazy look. She has the crazy eyes. She has the crazy look. And I've called it before with people. I'm just saying.
Well, he probably has one hell of a prenup.
She would have to be with him, but I just looked her up, people. You got to just, yeah.
Listen, she'll put up with him for 7 years and she'll get her $1 billion settlement. And that'll be that,
She's probably already gotten an arrangement. Everything with those people is transactional. Everything.
Wait,
Oh.
so Kevin Costner actually has a gigantic ranch in Montana? I was like, isn't that like his TV persona? But that's like that's what he actually likes.
Both things are true. Both of those things are true. Now, the ranch that they shoot where Yellowstone was shot, that's not his ranch. That I know, because that building, that lodge has been like, I know that's not his, because I know but he also does. Yeah. He's been playing cowboys since Dances with Wolves.
And that's always been his best work. So try to relive it, but it is kind of
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do, and this is why, we don't really deal too much in sort of like that whole like pop culture thing, but what Whitney Cummings did on New Year's Eve, I mean, honestly, I don't know how she didn't get kicked off the air, because this went on for like a minute.
Wasn't Anderson Cooper like hiding under an umbrella?
Well,
I didn't even see his face. I couldn't see.
He was shitting a brick under the umbrella, but nevertheless, that's kind of what he was doing.
Have you seen this, Zaid? Have you seen this?
I haven't seen I think I heard about it, but I haven't seen it now.
All right,
do you have the clip? Okay.
Like, because if you know anything about Whitney Cummings, and I've seen her do, I've been to one of her stand-up shows once. She has like like truthful diarrhea. Like when she gets going, she'll just go and she doesn't stop. So,
they should be lucky she's not, because she's raunchy in stand-up. This is probably PG-13, but yeah.
Probably as close to as you could get, but it's pretty interesting.
I do believe we need to hold 2024 accountable for its behavior. That is what white women do now. We point out other things that are toxic because we don't get irony, and that is our truth. This was the year that people were behaving so poorly, we started being wistful about murderers. Remember, this was the year we were like, were the Menendez brothers so bad? Were we too hard on the Menendez brothers? This was the year we could not get enough of murderers. Gypsy Rose became our favorite celebrity because murdering your mom is so brat. They had her on a red carpet, a little on the nose for a murderer, but she was like posing in a fancy dress. We were like, slay, and she was like, I did. And of course, our heartthrob of the year was the alleged cold-blooded killer named Luigi, who is now in the same prison as Diddy, which I'm very upset about because Luigi already has a lower back issue. This was the year nothing made sense. Fertility was down, sales of baby oil was up, white supremacy groups reached record highs. It got so bad, Ariana Grande became white again. 2024 totally broke our brains. Half the people I know think we're in a simulation. I'm starting to wonder. When I go to a website and it asks me if I'm a robot or not, half the time I get the quiz wrong. I'm like, does the shadow of a bike count as a bike? I don't know. Why am I looking at a grainy photo of a crack house? Money's over. I'm like, I don't even know what crypto is. As far as I understand, it's just astrology for men. Like, I don't. 2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright.
Oh. That last part was pretty good, and it's funny. Like, it takes a comedian to say that last part, right? Like, very few political commentators who in the associated with Democrats would ever make that joke, even though no one can argue with it, right? Like,
it's not a coincidence that Anderson's umbrella is perfectly aligned, like with his mouth. I cannot, like, he's definitely wants to crawl into a hole.
Well, a couple of things. I do not appreciate her calling Luigi Mangione a cold-blooded killer because he hasn't been convicted. As far as we know, it's only alleged, and I don't think it was done in cold blood if it was, but that's an argument for a different day. What I do find very interesting is people forget Whitney was actually a huge, and I mean a huge supporter of RFK when he was running for president. So you kind of had to know if you were going to bring her on and you were going to let her have this kind of 2-minute drill that she was going to throw some things at you that you weren't going to want to hear. And you would think after the statement she just made about Biden, that would get her kicked off, or that would be like, okay, that's great. You've had your fun. But
she's saying all the things that Andy wish he had the balls to say.
Oh, Andy, you see, the thing about Andy, and I don't follow any of that, Real Housewives stuff that he's been promoting for 20 years. But Andy definitely strikes me as the type of person who's like, no, do it. Come on, do it.
Right. But he would pretend he knew nothing about it.
Of course. Right. All right, we'll keep going.
Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's. Oh God, Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No.
Let me be clear though. 2024 was not only negative. The
She
media
just
wants
nailed
us
a
to believe this
sponsor.
country is so divided, but we actually came together a lot this year. Like as a nation, we unanimously agreed that we would rather see J-Lo in a toxic relationship than in concert. We all agreed the government totally knows what drones are and are telling us. The drones are still up there, and we have no idea what's behind them. No idea. I mean, they're still up in the sky, so I guess we can rule out that they were made by Boeing. The point is, I think we all agree on a lot of things. And since I only have a minute left live on establishment media, why don't we just say a bunch of things that we know that they'll never cover? Okay, ready, go. Trump Jr. didn't have any silverware in his house. No one thought that was weird? Are we still rolling? Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia put money into Disney, so just know there won't be any girl characters in the next Cars movie. Are we still rolling? This is wild. Okay, why have so many presidents' chefs died? Weird. Boy Scout of America, they renamed itself Scouting America. You know who else changed their name? Sean Combs. Just saying. Let's learn something in 2025. I can't believe you guys are still letting me go. This is amazing. I love CNN. Please stop me, Andy, because I will just keep going.
Happy New Year, Whitney Cummings.
That's great. But you know what? The only thing that really got the red flag was going after Pfizer and Moderna.
Yeah.
Those are literally their sponsors, like that, and probably the Boeing. Like all the other stuff, I don't think really matters, but going after the corporate sponsors really does not bode well.
Well, the one that she said that I found interesting that I haven't really looked into, but probably is true. Apparently, a lot of the president's chefs have died over the years.
Yes.
What is that all about?
Man.
I'm guessing that, have some chefs been, I don't want to know. I don't want to assume, but there's probably a reason. You know, kind of like if you remember when things were getting a little too close for comfort for Hillary back in the primary against Bernie. And there was a guy who apparently was going to testify, and then he mysteriously died in a weightlifting accident. I always found that one to be very interesting. So yeah, when these stories come out, you kind of, you want to dig, but you really don't know where it's going to go. So kudos to Whitney for having the gall to say a lot of things that I think we would like people on. I mean, who knows how many people are watching New Year's Eve on CNN, but I would assume the ones that
but
are.
The people that are probably not all too happy with that.
No, and they're probably not really aware of any of these things either. And their reaction generally is, how could you say such a thing? It's terrible. It's a lot.
There's a lot of pearl clutching happening.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, it's kind of like Ricky Gervais at the Oscars. It's like,
Oh.
well, he'll never be invited back.
No,
again,
she'll
so-
never get invited back there again.
So I guess just go for it while you got it, right? Well, but we are the new media, so the future rests with us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I not only did she say a lot of truth, but it was really funny. Like I'm not super familiar with her, so I should go watch her stand up too. It sounds like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, she is. She gets, and she can be raunchy, which I
Right.
appreciate. Yeah. No, she's adult. It's for adults.
Yeah, I used to do improv, so I had a team. I go around doing improv comedy, which was a lot of fun. But I think the difference between the two is improv is more situational. Like you're trying to be in a funny situation where you're doing things. Whereas stand up, you can just have like amazing one liners. So yeah, I enjoy both. I like them. I appreciate both of them.
Well, I have been suggested to do stand up. I haven't done it, but that's also because I can method.
You do impersonations well, but I don't know that you would necessarily do like stand up.
Well, listen, my entire political career is one great big stand-up performance, and it's a really great one. So enjoy it while you can. We're coming back for 4 more years, and we're going to make America great again in 25. So, yeah, it is going to be interesting. And I don't really know what's ahead of us. This is just kind of like a great unknown period that we're going into. I think the Democratic Party is like decimated to a point at which I'm not sure how they're going to recover. If you had any idea what's going on down here in Florida right now, you'd be laughing, but also probably feeling sad for them as well. By the way, Jen, Jaden is running for vice chair for the state.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you know what? At this point, you might as well give it to a 24-year-old. You probably have better luck in actually getting somewhere if you did. Actually, I don't even think he's that old.
Why is he running for vice chair and not chair at this point? Who's running for chair?
You know what? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, this is all, as I like to say, this is all the brain trust of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That is why the state is literally going straight to hell. It's become a completely red state. The Democrat and in part, yeah, the Republican Party, definitely has, done a pretty strong job of, just building a solid infrastructure. But it wouldn't be possible if the Democratic Party just wasn't so inept and so archaic. But on top of everything else, the Democrats in this state are particularly horrific, led by DWS. The insider trading, the endless war hawkishness, all the things that make the Democratic Party completely unpalatable to the average voter in this country, the average independent voter especially. And so it's not surprising that we've headed down this road. How it's going to evolve, I'm not entirely sure. But that's sort of the great unknown, kind of like the state of where we are in politics right now. So from your perspective, Zaid, what do you foresee is sort of our future now as we look into 2025? Do you think that the ascension of the labor movement, or just this, overwhelming masses of people that really are just tired with the current system being what it is, do you see a continued growth, or are we heading for, some type of a police state type situation, as a lot of people are, kind of getting that impression is happening as well?
Well, look, I think it's really hard to predict these things. I think whenever you start predicting on a matter like this, you enter into a graveyard of other people who've made false predictions. But I will say this. Look, I think that a difference between Trump first term and Trump second term is, I think in the first term, his win was a big shock, right? Like, a lot of people didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Seemed like Clinton had it sewed up. Trump was chaotic, blah, blah, blah. This time around, I think a lot of people expected Trump to win, right? And I think that'll change how people respond to him and how they work with him, right? I think he might have a little bit more success in getting more buy-in from people like in corporate America, from people in Congress, from major media, so on and so forth. And this might mean that he can consolidate power a little bit better than he did in the first time, because in the first term, it was very chaotic White House, people constantly coming in and out, not particularly amazing midterm performance. He might actually surprise us a little bit this time, given the level of consolidation that he's been able to win and the fact that he's a known quantity in American politics, which means the Democrats would have to respond differently, right? I think in the first term of Trump, a lot of it was just like waiting for him to shoot himself in the foot or waiting for some next scandal to break, blah, blah. This time around, I don't know if Democrats can really have that approach as much. It seems like developing an alternative is much more important if Trump is more capable this time. And so far, he looks a little bit more capable to me. Of course, it could be 3 weeks from now he's sworn in to presidency and immediately chaos, boom. But it looks like he's a little bit more well-prepared now. It seems like he has a team that's more loyal, confident in him. He has wider buy-in across society. And that really will necessitate a very different response, I think. You can't be like a pure resist response, right? It has to be some kind of credible alternative response. And that might be a little bit harder for a political party that I think is still kind of reeling. Hasn't done a ton of self-reflection, I don't think, right? Like, I think there was a little bit after the election, but after that, they were just like, okay, let's put it behind us. It's Trump time now and talk about him. I've always noticed Democrats don't like talking about themselves, right? Like, they don't like discussing or debating or arguing. They get very uptight and it's a very bureaucratic structure, right? Like, there's a lot of middle managers in the Democratic Party. And I think that's how they act and operate. It's very different than Republicans. Republicans are always arguing and debating amongst themselves. This is a big part of their culture. And for whatever reason, the Democrats don't have the same thing. They haven't had the same thing for a long time. I mean, the best kind of big debate in the Democratic Party was maybe 2008, to some extent 2016. And otherwise, they really haven't had that much, right? And I think a party needs it to rejuvenate itself, to be, to perform the way that it needs to perform. I don't think Kamala Harris ever proved herself in any substantial crisis or political journey or controversy. She was just kind of filling a spot, right? And that's okay if your opponent's really weak. But Trump is stronger now. I think he could set up a dynasty of people who are stronger now as he transforms the Republican Party to some extent. And because of that, the Democrats have to get stronger as well.
Well, they're not going to be able to just say, "But look, Trump," because this is again. There's no worry about that happening again. I would feel less like discouraged, I guess, if his appointments weren't all neocon, Zio-Nazi type people. And that's my concern, because he did at least yet again campaign on this. I'm going to stop this war. I'm going to get us out of this. I'll fix this, like, and I do think he wants to be that guy. I do. I think he wants to go in and just sit down with Putin and figure it out. And like, I do think that he wants to do that. I just don't think that that's what's going to happen. And when you look at the kind of people that he has appointed, it's hard to be encouraged that that's actually even the direction he wants to go in. But I am hopeful in that I do believe his favorite thing to do is fire people. So most of the people that are being appointed now won't make it through 1 year. And then you will have to reassess who the new people are that'll come in. My thing is, I do think Vivek will be the first to go. He'll be the first domino to fall, but we'll see.
And I do think that his goal now is his legacy. I think he wants the legacy. I think he wants that Nobel Prize. I think that's very important to him. And I think he understands that he has to be an anti-war president. I do think that while everyone is focused on Elon, I think the most dangerous person in Trump's orbit is Miriam Adelson. I don't even think it's close. I think she's devastatingly dangerous. And part of the reason I feel that way is, she is the embodiment of the worst kind of Zionism, which is the Jewish Zionism blended with the evangelical Zionism. You have the likes now of Mike Huckabee who are, praying for the rapture. That's a dangerous place to be. Everybody used to laugh at, the things that Sarah Palin would say, and she was considered extremely fringe at the time. But now there's like a legion of people that share this sentiment. That do believe that Israel has to accomplish something biblically significant. And so because Trump is transactional, I think he's just kind of indifferent. I hope I'm wrong. But the more Israel continues to do what they do, the more dangerous things get. Because there's a lot of nations out there, whether it's BRICS and this sort of coalition that's forming, sort of surrounded around the idea of the unification between China and Russia, is going to be very significant. And how Trump chooses to deal with that, because he's already threatened it once. He's already put, I totally am going to take care of BRICS. It's like, that ain't going to work, pal. Like, that's not smart. He did the saber rattling with Kim Jong-un and it worked. But this is different. North Korea is no threat to our economic way of life, but BRICS is. And so it is going to be interesting to see how he threads that needle. That will define him as a president in this term, because it's going to come to a head. And when you have all these other nations that are going to be pointing their finger directly at the United States and saying, oh, by the way, suckers, you're the only ones who don't have universal health care or a living wage, and we do have it. So there is going to be this sort of like undercurrent of possibly an uprising, like I said, amongst the populace in this country. I think Luigi Mangione is just the beginning. I think that's just a start. I think there's going to be a lot more potential bloodshed that is going to happen, because I think a lot of people have just reached their breaking point. I really do. And the one thing that we cannot and will not see going forward, the for-profit health system, that cat will never be put back in the bag again. There's too many people that are now blowing the whistle on it, that are explaining exactly what goes on behind the scenes, how they literally play God and decide who lives and dies. Those types of things, too many people are going to be clued into that now. And I think that that's what's going to be overwhelming on the domestic side. So as we wind down the conversation, we would certainly like to hear your thoughts as far as, do you see it sort of in the same vein that Israel is going to define his foreign policy, and in many ways, potentially, healthcare is going to define the domestic policy?
Yeah, look, I think that Trump has a lot of instincts around his kind of wider international goals, what he wants his legacy to be. And I think those are going to come into conflict with, the kind of people who support him in the election, whether it was Christian evangelical voters, Miriam Adelson, and her kind of campaign financing, so on and so forth. because those people, you know, I think they are very wedded to the Israeli government and its interests, and really its interest is in expansion, right? Expanding into Palestinian territories and moving their sovereignty, building more settlements, and maybe a very indeterminate end to the war if there will be one. But I think Trump, on the other hand, you know, his legacy in this first term was the Abraham Accords, right? And he had made some agreements between Israel and some other countries. But really, if you look back at it, those agreements were not hard to make because those countries were not fighting with Israel anyway. They were kind of moving towards Israel anyway. But if he wants to expand them now and put more countries into the accords, it really can't happen in the context of the current wars that are happening because those countries politically cannot get away with it. Even if they're dictatorships, their public will be very upset about that, right? There needs to be calm for him to be able to put more people into Abraham Accords. There needs to be calm for him to kind of cement the legacy and keep going on that. And so I think he's going to run headfirst into Netanyahu on that matter. And Netanyahu has a coalition of people in his government who really just want greater Israel, right? They want more land, more territory, settlements. They think God gave it to them. That's their religious prophecy they're trying to fulfill. And some people in Trump's base feel the exact same way. So, you know, it's going to be a matter of can he corral elements of his coalition that may even be harming, you know, American interests or his personal interests in terms of the Abraham Accords. And I think that's going to be a really big question for him going forward. I do think he's probably a little bit less feckless than Biden. I think Biden, you know, ultimately his age was really caught up to him and he was just kind of on autopilot. And that was unfortunate. Whereas with Trump, there's a chance that he could actually put his foot down a little bit to move things if he wants to. Of course, you never know that with Trump. He often lacks competence, I think, in dealing with these problems. In terms of domestic policy, look, I think, you know, I was in DC when they did the first healthcare debate around Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. And I think, you know, a lot of the people who are there, they don't want to touch healthcare because it steps on so many toes, right? On pharmaceuticals, on insurance, on now, you know, these PBMs, hospitals, doctors, like everyone starts fighting with you. They all have like more money than anyone in the world. They start throwing that money into commercials and AstroTurf rallies and so on and so forth. And it creates a giant nightmare. So I think a lot of politicians are like, well, we just can't touch that. It's too radioactive. But as we saw after the killing of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, a lot of Americans are still hurting with healthcare. And it's a very, very raw spot for a lot of people in this country. And they are outraged about it. And they do want more done about it. And then not nearly enough has been done to rein in costs in particular and guarantee access and care. So I don't know how long they can run away from it, right? Like I think, you know, on one hand, they were afraid of this anger that was caught that the industry can gin up whenever they try to do any kind of reform. But on the other hand, maybe they should be scared about the anger that comes from not even trying any reform anymore, right? Like there's still so many people furious about it. It's still a major leading issue for the American people. And because costs are not in control, unfortunately, it's only going to get worse, right? As costs get more severe and also like way down on our businesses, way down on Medicare, the VA and Medicaid, that eventually they'll have to do something about it. So yeah, it's always hard to predict exactly when that moment will come to pass. But I think as long as the problem is so severe, the potential for that unrest is out there. So
couldn't have said
I'm
that.
hopeful. I'm hopeful that Luigi Mangione is sort of like the final straw that will sort of push that in that direction. I'm hopeful.
Yep, we can only hope. Guys, the links are in the description. Make sure that you subscribe to Zaid's newsletter at the American Saga. Again, it is very important that we support independent journalism. That is our job because there aren't too many of them out there anymore that are doing what we need. And that is just being as new. I mean, listen, this has been a great conversation, and I don't think anybody could even peg you politically.
I was going to ask you, what are not that, but what are the topics that you predominantly focus on and cover?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think I tend to cover, I look for underreported stories that I feel like aren't getting, you know, proper attention and coverage in mainstream media, but also it's a matter of like, you know, I think a lot of it is accountability type topics, you know, like understanding where things are, understanding where like people in power or institutions or elites in power are doing things improper, unjust, where people are being abused or mistreated or treated unfairly, looking for another way to look at those things. So like, for instance, on my newsletter, I did a piece about a hit podcast that just came out called Telepathy Tapes. And it was a really interesting podcast, well produced. You know, it claims to prove telepathic powers, but all the subjects are nonverbal autistic kids, right? Which is a very vulnerable population of people. And I think that some of the experiments they were doing, you know, they were verging on exploiting these children, right? And they really weren't proving what they were proving. I spoke to a lot of people who know a lot about autism, and they kind of explained this to me. And I spoke to the team that made the podcast, and that was kind of my conclusion, right? So that piece kind of blew up because I think I was giving people some of the information that the podcast didn't give them, right? About this important topic. We all know someone who's on the spectrum. We all have friends or family or loved ones who are on the spectrum. So I think it's something we need to slow down and kind of be more careful about than the podcast was. So yeah, I look for topics where I feel like, the full story isn't getting out there, where people are maybe being abused or mistreated, where institutions or powerful actors are not being held properly accountable. And that's usually where I dive in. That's kind of my beat. So.
Excellent. So you're kind of our kind of people. That's sort of what Jordan does as well on Status Quo. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Speaking truth to power and fighting for justice.
Yeah.
I
Happy
appreciate
New Year,
it.
Zaid.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
For
Happy
coming
New Year,
on.
guys. Yeah. It was so good. It was so great to be here.
Absolutely.
Bye,
Talk to
Zaid.
Thank you.
So that was fun. And I think it's also,
Well, he had me at his keffiyeh. You know what I mean? Like you could tell a lot about someone by the keffiyeh they wear.
well, thank you, Shonda. And it was a Shonda.
It was a shanda. We're never going to stop doing that, Shanda.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck
Never-
with that now.
That's it. Like now that is forever going to happen every time.
We're totally going to invade Greenland. They don't stand a chance. We're totally going to take it over. We're going to bring democracy. Democracy is coming to Greenland, and it's going to be great.
He said something about taking Canada and Greenland and like that ridiculous nonsense. And then people like in the Democratic Party that like will focus on that and as if he actually is serious. Well, thank you, Chris Garrett. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now that Peter's not here, he can't force me in my uniform anymore. I get to branch out. I get to wear different things.
Yeah, we have the uniforms in our back pocket. We could always bring them out every once in a while.
I like wearing other things.
So I do want to address, we obviously, every show, we're always going to address something of importance regarding Luigi Mangione if anything pops up. And this was an interesting clip that I saw that was posted online from TikTok regarding the overcharging of him and the statement that they're trying to make. Now, you are of the mind that the reason why they're going to overcharge, and they have overcharged on Mangione, is because obviously they want to send a message. They want to send a message. But on the other hand, they also want to make sure that they're able to convict him of something because.
Yeah. Well, first of all, prosecutors generally will overcharge. You're talking about state court. They will overcharge. They will throw so much shit against the wall and just see what sticks. That's just how they work. And, with him, yeah, it was definitely an intention of creating a very chilling effect. I mean, the terrorism charge is absurd. Everyone knows it's absurd. I don't see how that again, but I don't see how they're going to get 12 people to convict him of anything, quite honestly.
Well, the more that they go down this road, they may actually be overstepping in a way that the case could potentially get thrown out, because that's the thing. When you're desperate to try to put somebody away and
pigs get fat.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So here is the clip.
Here doing a deep dive of the Luigi complaints, and I came across something that makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever, and I need to get your guys' input on it. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, there are 11 counts in the indictment. The first 3 are murder charges, and then the rest of them are firearms, and then like one for a fake ID, right? Okay. And it doesn't make sense because all of the firearm charges require that he possess the firearms in the state of New York, but they're basing it on the firearms that he possessed once he was in Pennsylvania. Okay, tracks. No, it doesn't. Because we know that after the incident, he went into Central Park with a backpack, which ostensibly had all of the stuff from the crime in it, like these pew-pews that they're charging him with, right? And then we see him coming out of Central Park without a backpack because he ditched all the stuff. So unless they have footage of him going back into Central Park later to retrieve the backpack with said stuff in it, the stuff that he had on him in Pennsylvania necessarily cannot be the same stuff that he possessed when he was in New York to commit the crime. Right? So then all of those charges fucking fall out because they can't prove possession in New York. And it also validates everything everyone's been saying about Luigi being a decoy and not the guy who actually did the thing in New York. Because again, how could he have the stuff in Pennsylvania if he ditched it in Central Park in New York? Like they literally cannot be the same guy.
Okay, well, here's the thing. This is where her argument falls short. Well, okay. I will agree with her, and I've said this before, huge chain of custody problems. I mean, that's essentially what she's talking about, is how is that the same backpack? How did he have that on him? But I would suggest that obviously there was a firearm and it wasn't found in the backpack with the Monopoly money. However, the possession of the firearm charge when he was caught in Pennsylvania just seems silly. Like that, I don't even understand. But her sort of reasoning doesn't make sense either because, and I hate to be the person to say this to her, there could be two backpacks. There could be a backpack under a backpack. There could have been a backpack in a backpack. That backpack that he had in Pennsylvania could have had the backpack that he left in Central Park in it. I'm just saying, like, her reasoning is not very sound, but there are chain of custody problems.
Well, I think that she's right in the sense that this is definitely an overreach circumstance.
Oh, for sure.
No question. However, she is going down the conspiratorial rabbit hole that Luigi wasn't acting alone, that he at least had one accomplice.
No, she's going down the rabbit hole that he's not even the same guy.
Well, can you create enough reasonable doubt to suggest that it wasn't him? Because what hard evidence?
You can, but you don't need to. But her method of doing it won't hold up. I've already poured right through it. Her problem is that she's presuming that what he dropped in Central Park was all he had on him. And that makes no sense because obviously he did have a weapon, except for she's saying it was somebody else, except for the weapon that was found is the same weapon. Because they're not going to have their ballistics wrong. They have a chain of custody problem, absolutely. But the backpack in Central Park with the Monopoly money, that is just a distraction. And I thought it was clever. But for her to make that, oh, because he left his backpack there and there was no gun in it, then clearly he didn't have a gun. That's just silly.
Yeah. No, look, we'll finish it out.
Or at the very least, they're the same guy, but he wanted to get caught, and the stuff he had on him that day was not the stuff he had on the day of the crime. So if that's what they're basing most of their case off of, it's garbage. Because when the government stacks hella charges, most of which are low-key irrelevant, it means they can't prove the big crime, so they're trying to get you on a bunch of other little stuff so they can add it up to a big prison sentence and scare you into playing down so they don't have to prove their case on the charge that they don't have, that they know that they don't have the evidence to charge you on. I haven't gotten to the federal complaint yet, but I'm reading the New York State complaint and I'm like, this is garbage.
Yeah, I mean, that part's true. I mean, they're going to throw everything against him that they can. And in most cases, when they do that, they'll end up forcing the person to take a deal. But that's not going to happen here. There's no way. Not with that defense attorney and this public support. There's no friggin' way he's taking a deal.
Well, as Chris Garrett points out, his biggest problem was using the same false ID that he used at the hostel, which is probably true.
Yeah, no, identity isn't going to be the issue here. That's what I'm saying. Like, her reasoning about this is silly.
Well, as our resident attorney, T.M. Martin, says, let Luigi's lawyer do the lawyering. And
well, yeah.
Apparently she's really good at it, too.
Well, that's why I know that they're not going to take a deal. You don't bring in a lawyer like that to take a deal. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not trying to lawyer for him. I'm just saying I don't know who this chick is, the sort of like, you know, Monday morning attorney. I don't know. But, yeah. Who is this? Why are we watching her? Who is this?
No, the name of her TikTok is What the Ish. That's
okay. Well, she doesn't know what the ish she's talking about in terms of this.
Fair enough. I guess we don't have to listen anymore.
No, but we do. I mean, look, she's right about overcharging, and she's right that there's a chain of custody problem, and she's right about a possession of firearms charge when he was caught in Pennsylvania under New York law. Like, that doesn't make sense either. You would have to have it on you at the time. Like, yeah. I mean, so there's definitely some points there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely going to be there's going to be a lot of ups and downs that will go into this case, assuming that it gets started anytime soon. I mean, who knows how many delays there's going to be, if there's going to be any continuances. And, you know, we all know that when it comes to the Southern District of New York, these things can...
I'm concerned for his safety and well-being.
I would be too.
But as I've said before, and yeah, Josie's got her name there. It's Karen Friedman Agnifilo. And yeah, and if this by any chance gets to her, please call me. I'll help you. I'll do anything I can for jury consulting.
Are you sure that it's that way, Josie? Or if it's not, Karen, I Ginafilo Friedman, because I think she's
You
Italian.
think she has them
I think
inverted?
she's Italian and she married Jewish. I think that's
Whichever.
yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Well, she's a pizza bagel either way. So there you
She's
go.
a pizza bagel. All right, but point being, you don't have a lawyer like that if you're not planning on having like a really good showing. And I think their biggest issue is jury selection. I do not see how they're going to be able to have an unbiased jury. I don't see that.
It's a big club and you ain't in it.
Hey, I did criminal defense and I have a full appreciation for it. I think it's incredibly important. And why am I worried about Luigi's safety? I'm worried about well, on the one hand, I think as far as like other inmates and stuff like that are just people that are there, I think that he's probably protected and that he's probably like royalty. Like, I think he's definitely high in the pecking order.
I definitely agree.
However, a lot of those people can be bought and paid to do things to Luigi. And the problem with this case is not only just jury nullification, but let's say hypothetically they're able to find a jury. Okay. I don't know who that is. Oh, so
Cousin Vinny.
Oh, Cousin Vinny. So they're able to do that. This going to trial, this being in trial in court every day is not something that the powers that be want. This is not going to go well. The people that the health insurance executives, the big pharma people, honestly, the entire oligarchy, they do not want this laundry aired in a court. They just don't. It's a bad look. He's basically Robin Hood, and it's gonna and with a good lawyer. So my concern for his safety is that the people with a lot of money and power don't want this to see the inside of a courtroom. And because of that, I have concerns for his safety. That's why.
I definitely agree with that.
And I don't want him to get Epsteined. But the one thing he does have going in his favor as compared to someone like an Epstein is Epstein would be the bottom of the pecking order barrel in a prison situation if he were with other people. Whereas Luigi Mangione, for the most part, will probably be like a legend there.
Yeah, if Luigi, I don't know where he's being housed right now. I don't think he's at Rikers, but if he, let's just say for the sake of argument that you're wondering what could ultimately happen to him and why it would be a dangerous situation for him.
I know what could happen to him.
Yeah, so what you have to understand is that if he gets boxed into a prison like Rikers, you could easily convince, potentially, I mean, it's not a guarantee, but you could easily convince a person doing a 30-year stretch to take them out, and in the process, will make your charge go away.
There's a lot of variables, but nobody at Rikers is doing that long of time because Rikers doesn't have any, but well, in theory, it's not supposed to have anybody in there that's past a year.
All right, so if he got stuck up in Sing Sing, it's sort of a similar situation. That's my point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are a lot. First of all, I always say this, nobody is untouchable. And the people that have a lot to lose from this going to trial don't like that. That's what concerns me for his safety now. And however, I do believe that this is something that if I'm thinking about that his lawyer has thought about. So hopefully there have been certain precautions and things taken. But yeah, that jury selection will be like the coolest thing. I would love to just see it.
Colin, I do want to do the flip side of this story. I sent you some information earlier pertaining to that Newsweek article.
There's a flip side to this story?
Oh, yeah.
There's a flip side to which story? And why are we like this? You're too, go back to how we were. Go back to the way we were. The way we were. Yes, I prefer that. Thank you. Nobody needs to see my pores, least of all me. So why do you, I mean, what happened that is the opposing story? Oh, this. Okay, this is not opposing story. This is
United Healthcare denies claim of woman in coma.
Yeah.
In a coma.
Yeah.
And so this gets even more interesting because many Americans have expressed frustration with the health insurance system, which was brought into focus when United Health CEO Brian Thompson was shot and killed in New York, allegedly by Luigi Mangione, who has been charged in connection with the homicide as awaiting trial. Mangione pleaded not guilty to murder and weapons charges. Where this gets interesting is there is a post that was put out there by I think he's a surgeon.
It's a doctor.
Dr. Levy. And he said, this is his tweet: United Healthcare just denied a claim on one of my patients in the ICU with a brain hemorrhage, in a coma, on a ventilator, with heart failure, because I haven't proven to them that caring for her in the hospital was medically necessary. Tear it all down. From Zachary Levy, MD.
Yeah, I've said it before. Doctors are not keen on having to negotiate with bean counters to get what they want for their patients. I know this.
Jen, please, if you could share with the audience, your husband is a urologist. How does he feel about the for-profit health system that he has to deal with on a regular basis?
Okay, I will say this, and I don't, when the whole thing went down with Brian Thompson, the only thing that Jason had to say about it really was that he had wished it was Humana.
Oh man,
because that's the one.
That's
the one he's got bigger problems with. But that was his response to the situation. He's like, I wish it had been Humana. But anyway, so that's how doctors feel about it. Doctors feel like they spend an inordinate amount of their time, money, and space dealing with managed care. And it's not just also, it's also very demeaning, by the way, for doctors who have studied and know what they're talking about and are trying to do what's best for their patients to have to spend their time arguing with insurance companies to get what their patients need for them. It's demeaning because these are people that actually trained and went to med school and know something. They know a thing or two. And when they have to sit there and argue with someone who knows nothing about medicine based on whatever is in their handbook. And this is, again, the problem with managed care. But doctors do not appreciate having to fight and waste their time fighting with non-doctors over what's in their patient's best interest. And I will say doctors can get uppity about it. But you know what? This is the one case where I kind of support them in their uppityness.
Well,
if I went to medical school, why am I sitting here arguing with some friggin' accountant about what my patient needs? And that's what it is for them.
Well, not only that, but let's be honest. They try to take away the humanity of a lot of doctors. Most doctors want no part of this.
No.
And nurses especially want no part of this. When you are a doctor, whether you're a pediatrician, an optometrist, heart surgeon, whether you're, an at-home, in-home care nurse, these things are very personal for people. And in many ways, I don't want to say it's like the Florence Nightingale type circumstance, but there is this caretaker mindset that comes into play where you are a doctor, you are a nurse, you are taking care of these people. This is very important. This is life-changing in many ways. Now, are there doctors that like to play God? Absolutely. But that's an anomaly. Most of them are there because they want to serve humanity. They want to help. And that is the key. And can you imagine what it's like being a doctor, knowing that you've gone to such lengths to try to help somebody with a chronic disease or injury, and then the next thing you know, they are told by the for-profit insurance company or the big pharma profit company that, no, we can't give this to you. Or if we are going to give it to you, we're going to make it so damn expensive, we're literally going to put your person on the street.
Do you
Like,
want to know which doctors actually do kind of like it? Because there are doctors that like the system. There are doctors that like it. And again, Jason would never name names or say things, but there are certain doctors, very
any doctors that are connected to the pharmaceutical industry that make money off of giving prescriptions.
Not just that. It's not just that. Okay. So there's a lot of different things. So a lot of practices, and there unfortunately are a couple urological practices down here where the doctors are known amongst other urologists for basically getting every unnecessary thing you could possibly think, overbilling, overcoding, overcharging, all of those kinds of scams. And there are doctors, unfortunately, like any other profession, that are unethical. And so to those doctors, this system works because they're able to rate it. They're living high off the hog from it. But doctors who are legitimately, genuinely concerned for their patients' well-being are sick and tired of arguing with non-doctors as to what their patients need. That's what I have grown used to hearing. So,
and Australia is one of many countries, Cam. They just
and it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what we have.
What system is perfect?
None.
We definitely need a system where being healthy is a huge part of how you do reduce a lot of the problems that exist within the system. But make no mistake, we are not a healthy culture by any stretch. In fact, we are the fattest country in the world. So that's not a mistake.
Isn't that amazing? And here is what is so frustrating about it. Not only are we the fattest country in the world, but the profiteers that now profit off of the fatness in every single direction, whether it's the diabetes meds or the Ozempic people, or even certain specialized whatever clinics for fat removal, whatever it is. Like, it's so gross. But what's so pathetic about it is that it isn't just a matter of diet and exercise. You've got countries like in France, they eat way more cheese than we do, right? Like, sure. There's countries and places that what they eat is not necessarily low-fat food.
But you have pointed out,
not processed and poisonous.
And you've also pointed out the quality of the soil in other parts of the world.
That, and they also generally, and this isn't everywhere, but kind of, they walk.
They do.
We drive. So we have so many sedentary, we're much more sedentary, but our food is allowed to be poisoned. We've talked about this before. So what, for example, in other countries, and I don't know if people know this, but in other countries, they don't refrigerate eggs.
No.
They don't refrigerate eggs. And this is something that I really do care about, because I've had non-refrigerated eggs in place, and it's much better, people, I'm telling you. But in this country, we have to refrigerate our eggs. And why is that? Do you know why? Why do we have to refrigerate our eggs?
I mean, the only eggs I've ever known that I never refrigerated was when I did live.
But do you know why we have to refrigerate our eggs in this country?
I'm not 100% sure. The only eggs I know that don't need to be refrigerated are eggs that come directly from the hen. And, if you have a coop. And
right. Right. But here's the problem. In this country, our eggs, like eggs at supermarkets, are treated with chemicals and bleached so that their shells are weakened and will absorb bacteria. Whereas if you just left them the hell alone, then they wouldn't have to have that issue. So when you're in a country like Costa Rica, from anywhere from Costa Rica to France to Italy to wherever, and you're in a market, you'll see the eggs in a basket on the counter by the register. You're not going to see them refrigerated. And even in places in this country, and this is annoying, this is one of those annoying things that I have learned, even in places in this country that don't need to refrigerate their eggs. Like, so for example, the tailgate market in Asheville, when I would go and people literally just collected their eggs that morning, whatever, they're still legally required to keep those eggs refrigerated. Now, a lot of them don't, because we know that it's stupid and not necessary. But so we create laws to basically enforce unnecessary laws that poison our food.
And again,
I'm just saying.
And this gets back to the whole thing that we were talking about with Zaid, and we've talked about at great length. Why, when the powers that be know that the most likely domino to fall, without question, is healthcare because it's too obvious now. And Mangione was simply the straw that broke the camel's back.
And we don't know his motive. I was watching Jordan today, and he made a point of that there's some suggestion evidence that it's just an anti-establishment oligarch. He maybe just picked United because they had the most profits and the most denials, right? Like it could have just been that, but it isn't necessarily just specific to healthcare. And I think that this is why we have to stay on this regardless of what happens.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, listen, it's
and I can't I am concerned for him.
I am too. And it's an indirect, listen, it just so happens that our channel is seeing growth by total happenstance because of the two stories that we recognize are the most important to cover right now. Israel on the foreign side and healthcare, Mangione on the domestic side.
Yes, because those are the two things that people are most infuriated. Like those are the issues that everybody can relate to, feeling so angry.
But I also think that they are the two most impactful issues that we are dealing with right now in the current circumstances. I mean, as I said, the idea that there is such a primal focus on Elon Musk and there is no attention whatsoever being paid to Miriam Adelson, that's not by accident. That's intentional. Because if the attention that Musk is getting right now regarding the H-1B visas, if Adelson got that same attention regarding her push for greater Israel, you better believe that would be rocking the boat in D.C. right now, and that is something that they will not tolerate.
But they're all on the same team, so who would be rocking that boat? Who would be even on the other side? Not that there is another side, but like, let's say there even was the Democratic side. They're not going to, they're on the same page with this.
No, it's definitely going in a direction that I think is very dangerous right now. But you know what? I'm not going to apologize for showing this since everyone needs to know who these people are. So guys, these are the CEOs that are making $20+ million a year.
Oh, and as I always say, I really do like to, this piece of shit. And he's not even from this country.
No, a lot of them are not from this country.
Who is that? That looks like the guy from Wonder Years, kind of in a very twisted, grown-up way. The older brother.
That's not a man. That's a woman.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Ooh, yeah, you're getting canceled now. Now you finally crossed over. Yeah, you're screwed now.
It was a guy. I don't know. Look, I'm not. You're the one who's genderizing. I'm just saying.
It would only be fitting that the name of CVS's CEO would be Karen.
Karen.
It would have
Lynch.
to be. Lynch. Have you guys? Yes, it's unfortunate that she's Irish, but whatever. Have you ever, and I mean ever, gone into a CVS and seen a Karen go to town on one of the helpless customer service representatives?
I wasn't looking at the other ratios. Is this going in order of rate? Because to me, that is the most important number.
Yes.
The ratio number is the most important number.
It's ascending up the ladder.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, okay. Because this is where it's just absolutely disgusting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's going down.
It looks like Dracula and Stephen Miller had a baby.
David Cordani of Cigna.
Oh, my God, that's the devil's advocate if I ever saw one.
Do you want to make a deal?
No, so the ratio is going down, not up. So,
280 to 1. I mean, that's.
Well, hers was 300 and whatever it was to 1. Yeah. 300.
No, so he's a much more human.
He's a much more humane oligarch. Okay, so we're going they're going higher. Yeah, they're going lower. All right. So, yeah.
Got quite a few women that are CEOs. And I thought that women were trying to fight for equal. Well, here's your equal.
They are. They're equally as douchey as the men. Let me explain. This is women in positions like this, as often is the case also in things like politics where you see things.
Oh, they're more sociopathic than men are.
Like people like Hillary Clinton, Amy Klobuchar. Like when you see women that get to certain positions, first of all, know this. It's kind of similar when a person, And it could be whatever the minority group, choose your minority group or your oppressed people, reach a certain point. You better believe they work 10 times harder to get to that point. And when it comes to a woman, you better believe she clawed her way over 10 times more people to get to that position.
Well, here's the CEO that your husband doesn't think too highly of.
Oh, is this him?
This is Bruce Broussard of Humana.
He probably wouldn't even know who it was. He just knows he hates Humana the most. I don't know that he would even know who it was.
Yeah. No. Well, how would you? Most people don't know who these guys are.
No, I mean, and this is Humana. And again, this is also something people need to know about, like when you're dealing with health insurance. It's very regional in terms of what the leading things are. So like down here, Humana is really big. It just depends on location.
And Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah. Well,
that's true.
Yeah.
These are the blood-sucking vampires of our day.
Oh my God.
Several. But remember, it's all just cogs in the machine. But they certainly are up there.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. And yes, it is particularly disgusting that it's healthcare.
Well, yes. I mean,
it isn't just any oligarchy, you know.
Well, that's why people like, Betsy DeVos are really terrible. But this is a different example because one of the problems with the likes of BlackRock, I mean, we know Larry Fink. We know who some of these guys are for sure.
Well, we don't know him. You say it like we know him. We don't.
What we do know for certain is that these CEOs are profiting off of death. There's no question. Pain and suffering. And then death.
But see, here's the rub, though, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people really want to face. So are the shareholders. So when you want to start going down that rabbit hole, it's a lot easier for people to point the fingers at, like, the officers and all of those people. But at the end of the day, if you have any of these companies in your portfolio, and I want to be clear, like that's a wide range of people because
that is
people are in mutual funds, whatever you're invested in. If you have investments in the healthcare, in that industry, you are one of those blood-sucking people.
That's true.
That's just, and I mean, it's you can't bitch about a CEO if you in general support the concept of having a profit insurance industry.
That's a good point, Chris.
Or a profit health industry.
That is what they do. And so what I think is a task for us is to find out who some of these shareholders are directly.
It's everybody, though. That's the problem. When you pull up a company like a fund that represents like the entire, like all the teachers unions in the entire country or whatever it is, it's like, it's too massive.
Listen, I've said it before. You can choose if you are in the system, as our friend Nina Turner has said, didn't take a vow of poverty. You can make moral choices. I made a very moral choice early on in my commercial real estate career a year ago. I had a person whose last name is Wasserman. Amazing, right?
Ironic.
I never really got to the bottom of whether they were related, but I'll pretend that they were probably distant cousins. Nevertheless, this was a person who was part of an extremely wealthy family, had a getaway in Wyoming, which is where they spend most of the time, in, I believe, Jackson Hole.
That's where the train station is.
It's where all the wealthy aristocrats like to go.
Where the train station is.
And so she had, to my knowledge, in excess of 40 multifamily properties in Broward County alone. This person's super rich. And so I made a decision, even though I had broken bread with her, that one of the first conversations I had about a month after October 7th, 2023, was her saying, I think I'm going to donate $1 million to the IDF. And that was the last time I spoke with her. And I have no regrets. May have cost myself quite a bit.
You're talking about people in terms of work choices. What I'm saying is the average American citizen who does have any sort of investment in any sort of thing, whether it's through your work or otherwise, right? So these are things that aren't even necessarily within the control of a lot of individuals if you're diversified or you're in whatever your union thing is. Like regular people are shareholders in funds and whatever, and they're part of it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And you won't even know who those, how would you even know who all the people are?
Well, that's true. But as I've said, you have a choice. If you can live with blood on your hands, that's fine. And I understand there are people in desperate situations. I mean, this is a crumbling empire. I think most people recognize that. I mean, even my super conservative best friend that I grew up with, who I've told you about, even he, in his very stubborn way, admitted that this current health system can't stand. When a guy like that starts saying that, even though he says, I don't want the government running my health care, you know it's only a matter of time.
What are we covering next? Which one of these fun little ditties did you want to talk about?
I've been saving this up because I think it's a good place to close the night.
Please tell me this isn't about you're not going to go after him and challenge him to a duel, right?
I'm not going to challenge him to a duel.
Is that what we're going to talk about? Do you need to discuss this?
What, you don't want me to?
You can. I'm just letting you know that, like, you're a little, I don't want you to be like, on a watch list that he has put together.
Well, he's probably part of the Mossad, so it wouldn't surprise me in the least. Just like I'm convinced that Ben Shapiro is part of the Mossad. But before our little, needle dick decided to meet with the president of the United States earlier today, this is.
By the way, people don't know who we're talking about. Before we get into this, if you're new here, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Also, if you are so inclined and you like what we're doing here, you could become a patron at on our Patreon, Generational Change. I was like, you always have to stop at like a point and do that and run our patrons. There you go.
Oh, I'm doing it right now.
So yeah, so if you're new, thanks for coming. And so before you get into this, you need to give a little bit of a background as to who you're talking about. Like nobody but me right now knows who you're even talking about. So
Jen has always tried to temper my vitriol towards other content creators.
Just so you guys know, I discourage this type of coverage, but he just gets to the point where he can't contain himself. And this is one of those times.
Well, this is one of those times where I think it's completely justified, because what a lot of people are not recognizing about what happened earlier today is anybody who knows who I think is the biggest shit lib in the Democratic liberal establishment cadre.
Tell us who it is.
It's David Pakman. I believe he is the worst. He's the worst. Like, it doesn't, and I've been on his ass since he tried to kind of.
Please rephrase that.
He presented himself as a huge Bernie advocate back in 2016. But this is a guy who very actively promoted Juan Guaido and the regime change in Venezuela from Maduro.
Yeah, that's the part. That's sort of the, you went over and you went a little too far there.
Well, it's not a question of going too far. It's a question of, did he show his stripes? And he most certainly did. He showed his whole ass. He showed exactly who he was, because for me and for Jen, and the fact that we ran a congressional campaign at the time in South Florida where the Maduro-Guaido question was a big deal. You know what we learned from a lot of the affluent Venezuelans that live in the western part of Broward County? They don't give a fuck about Juan Guaido. They don't want you out there touting Maduro as some grand hero to be supporting him. But if you think that we give a flying fuck about Guaido, we don't care. That's just political cannon fodder, because we all know that the purpose of getting rid of Maduro is for one reason and one reason only. Maduro does business with China and Russia, and they don't do business with us.
There's variables, I mean, he wants to actually share his resources with his people and not give them to us. And, there's a lot of variables.
Well, he's not Gaddafi. I'm not going to say he's that.
No, look, I don't need to like or dislike Maduro. That's neither here nor there. But it's also something that we learned about that in particular was it's very much like everything else, a class issue. The people, the Venezuelans that are here, meaning in South Florida, but in this country, are generally white and affluent, and they left with not only the means to do so, but they would prefer the economy wherein it worked so much better for them. So a lot of them have left because it's not quite. They want it to be completely capitalist because that benefits their class. So the people in Venezuela that did vote for Maduro tend to be not only the majority of people, but your regular working people. So it's very class-based.
Well, before Hackman, that's what he is, had the opportunity to do his little photo op with the president. This is what the president was doing earlier today. Control your intestinal.
I just can't even imagine. What are we going to see?
This is really, really going to make you sick.
Elizabeth L. Cheney for putting the American people over party.
Because she doesn't like Trump because she has sour grapes against Trump because he endorsed somebody against her and she friggin' lost. That's why she hates Trump. She and her father should also be in prison. That's another story.
You got the Citizens Medal of Freedom because you switched or you dropped out of the GOP. No, wait, you didn't even drop out. You got kicked out.
Because she's a Trump would call her a loser. But the thing is that, so she spoke out against what you all think was some big insurrection.
This is our resident Irishman likes to say, 100% correct.
This is hilarious. So the Presidential Citizens Medal. First of all, I don't know what that is. And I'm not really big into medals and awards and pomp and circumstance anyway. But just the visual first of all, the look on his face, he's so confused.
He looks like he's melting.
Oh, it's horrible. But just that whole concept of redeeming so many people from the past that have so historically been wrong on so many issues or nefarious or all of the above, and not just redeeming them, but really showing that they're all friends and it's one big club. I mean, it always has been. And now it's like, it's sort of like when I learned that professional wrestling wasn't real. That's what it's like. Like when you learn it's not real, like now you just see it.
But why would she accept that?
Why wouldn't she accept that? She's a whore. Clearly.
You're telling me. Well, then this happened.
The look on his face. Oh my God. He's like so smitten with Joe. Oh my God. He is
part of a small, remember, Jen, he was part of a small group because he's very exclusive.
Okay, so just read it. Read his post. So this, for people who are just listening, this is a post by David Packman.
David Hackman, get it right. I was
with a picture of him and the president in the Oval Office.
I was part of a small group of independent media creators and influencers invited to meet with the president and other administration officials at the White House. I do not expect to be invited back to the White House for quite some time.
Yeah, because you're probably no fun.
All right, motherfucker.
Not that the Trump and Elon people look like they know how to have fun either. Did you see them with the YMCA song? Like Trump is there. No, they could. Him and first of all, Elon only stood up when he realized everybody else stood up. And here's the thing, and this is something that Elon needs to understand. When the president stands, everybody stands.
Correct. That's true.
And that's how it goes. The fact that he was just sitting there when Trump was standing really was very interesting to me. That's just when the president stands, you stand. Unless you're in a wheelchair, like there's definitely, unless you're the queen, like there are certain things where maybe you wouldn't, but you're not that.
Thanks, TM. No, Pac-Man is somebody that I have had a very sharp opinion about for a very long time. I am always very critical of men who I perceive as lacking in certain ways. It could be physically, it could be emotionally, it could be from a relationship standpoint. Maybe he doesn't do well with women. Maybe he doesn't do well with men. I don't know what his poison is, but to each their own. What I do know is that he is an opportunist of the highest order. He is everything that is wrong with independent media. He is a version of sort of Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo and Chris Hayes, all of them. And I saw that. And for me, I have always felt that this is somebody who, like other people in the independent media circuit, have figured out a way to grift to a very sizable income and lifestyle, and he's achieved it.
Clearly he's achieved it. But for him to claim to be like small and independent when clearly you're in there, it's just not true.
There's nothing independent about the media job that he does.
Exactly. Like independent of what?
And he is not a journalist. He's just a talking head. And he's actually, if you've ever watched him.
I actually haven't. I've never seen his show. I never saw his show.
He's extremely bland. There isn't anything interesting about him at all. He has no personality whatsoever. In fact, he comes off like a smug piece of shit that belongs in a country club.
So what is it that really set you off so much about this today in particular? Like, is it the picture of him and Joe? Is it the smug look on his face?
It's the fact that you have these two men standing together, although one's a boy and the other's an old man. And these are two people that have been as forceful in their support of Israel and what they have done to the Palestinian people as anybody. Joe probably really does have a true Zionist disposition.
And I'm sure Pac-Man does too.
And Pac-Man absolutely does.
Yeah.
Pac-Man is an affluent Jew from the Boston area. And I've met plenty of them. I know these people. I know them well because my brother married into that type of a family.
See, you could have just told me he was a Patriots fan, and then I would sit here and hate him as much as you do, just for that alone.
Well, I don't know if he's a Patriots fan now because they're not doing so well, but I'm sure when they were kicking ass and taking names, he probably was at every game.
I cannot abide a Patriots fan. I could abide a lot. We could
This
agree.
is why we love this is why we love our audience. This is why we learn things that even I wasn't aware of, but I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised, but just so anybody knows, anybody Jewish can have citizenship in Israel if they want it, which is disgusting and pathetic in and of itself. But it's not like that is so, it's not hard to come by is my point.
That's a good one, official. That's a really good one. APAC, man. I like it. That's even better than Hack.
That's actually good.
Yeah.
APAC, man.
Very good. Very
APAC,
good.
man.
Really great.
That's as good as AOC Pelosi.
This guy has supported every war, and I mean every war. Like this guy is a human version of the New York Times. There is nothing war related. Once he was on board with regime change in Venezuela, he was as fully on board with Ukraine.
I was going to say he had to have been one of those change my profile pictures to the Ukrainian.
Oh, absolutely.
People.
1,000%. So he was fully on board with that. And of course, he has been on board with Israel from day one, no hesitation, believes that they have the right to defend themselves, which is always the talking point that they got stuck with forever, and just continue to espouse constantly.
Ironically, which they legally don't, but anyway.
No. Well, they're not even a real state. They're a made-up state.
They're a made-up state, but they have no regard for international law anyway. But again, they legally do not have the right to defend themselves. Yeah. Can we take this down, or do we need to still look at it? Thank you.
I don't want you to suffer too much.
I mean, really. So did you get it all out? Everything you want to bitch about Pac-Man, or do you have more?
No, there's actually one more thing.
Okay.
So here's a guy who was constantly convincing everybody that the race between Kamala and Trump was razor thin, that Kamala was actually in front. In fact, he's one of the guys who was pushing the idea that Kamala was up by 3 points in Iowa.
Wait a minute. All the party tools were all promoting those bullshit numbers. And I said all along, I didn't believe those numbers. Mm-hmm. I said it from the beginning, those numbers were bullshit, but he wasn't like the only one. I mean, they were all pushing that.
However, what ended up happening right after the election is he saw a substantial drop, not only in viewership, but also subscribers, and I believe paid subscribers.
Oh, right. And he cried about it, right?
He went so far as to basically beg people to come back to his channel.
Yeah.
We are under attack, he was saying. Oh, yeah, I'll show you what being under attack is. Your sorry ass is only relevant because you stick to the corporate algorithm and do exactly everything that you in oh, there you go. Not a surprise. You know what Argentina has that the United States doesn't have? A universal healthcare system. You know what Israel has that the United States doesn't have? A universal healthcare system.
And unfortunately, also air raid sirens. So I wouldn't want to be going there for healthcare right now.
Probably not. But you know what? If Pac-Man is in a pickle, and he's probably been in a few, I am sure that he can easily get on a plane to Buenos Aires or Tel Aviv and go get the health coverage that he needs if, God forbid, he was in a bad situation that he needed to take care of. This is what happens when you basically sell your soul. He is the Democratic blue MAGA adjacent to Ben Shapiro. He is the mirror image. He's the same guy. There's really no difference between the two of them. Very little, if any. And
they could be friends. I could see that.
Yeah, why not? There's a lot of people that are friends that you would never know about because you guys haven't been to some of the events that both of us have been to. It's amazing how right George Carlin has been about all of this forever.
The big club that we ain't in?
No.
I don't want to be in a club. I'm not a club. I'm not a joiner, so it works for me.
Well, the greatest image I still remember was from the beginning of the pandemic when Pelosi and McConnell did that fist bump or that elbow bump. Remember that? And I said, this is it. This is it. This is they all go and have a nice fucking laugh at our expense when it's all said and done.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You think they give a flying fuck about any of us? If anybody, and I mean anybody, and Pac-Man would be one of the most guilty of this, Pac-Man's one of those people that is still going to go ape shit about the elections in 2026, the presidential election in 2028, as if that's really what's important in this country now.
It is, because that's his bread and butter. All right, wait. So my question for you then is, are you done with Pac-Man now?
You want me to be done?
Well, I mean, did you have something else to talk about regarding him in particular? Or are you just going to, because I know you could do an entire pontificating about Pac-Man regularly.
Well, I am going to do a
I almost want to block you from following him so you don't even see his posts.
I don't follow him. I don't follow him at all.
And how do you see his posts?
It's impossible not to when he puts some
I don't see his posts.
Yeah. I like club sandwiches.
What does it say?
Well,
I like club sandwiches. I used to. That used to be one of my most favorite thing was club sandwiches when I used to eat meat.
The bottom line is we can all turn it off. But make no mistake. When one gets sort of pegged, affiliated with a certain segment, then it kind of filters out to everybody else. And so when Pac-Man does what he does, it makes it more difficult for the rest of us. However, and this may be the one silver lining, I do think the Democratic Party, as I pointed out earlier, and I think you would agree, Jen, I think the Democratic Party is in a lot of trouble. I think that they don't fully realize how much people truly hate them. I think the idea that Jaden D'Onofrio, who is in college, is running to be the vice chair of the Democratic Party in the state of Florida, and he has one challenger, that shows you how far the party is sunk. Now, I would certainly...
Chris brings up an important point.
Oh, do we have a kente cloth?
I don't know. Just Chris made me think about that. What about the kente cloth stunt? And that's like one of those things that the Democrats do. You know, it's like that's what they've got, but that's what this is. It's like, it's
the thing that you also have to the thing you also have to remember about the Democratic Party that I think a lot of people are missing, because I do believe electoral politics is very important, but I believe it's the local nonpartisan races, which is what is truly important. Knowing who your judges are, that's what's truly important. But most
or
people,
better yet, don't vote for them if you don't know who they are.
Yeah. Most people don't know. That's the thing. We get caught up in the top-down approach to politics, but that's much more prevalent on the liberal side of things than on the conservative.
I'm getting further and further away from being even interested in just electoral politics in general, because I just don't think that that's where our change is going to come from.
Yeah.
It's just not at the end of the day.
Oh, there is no question, JRB, that there is a cabal. The Midas Touch brothers, those guys, they're Nepo babies.
I don't know any. I've heard of Brian Tyler Cohen. I've never heard of those other ones.
Brian Tyler Cohen's another shithead, but they're all fucking part of it. They're all, and listen, I don't care what your politics are. If you grift for money, Brian Tyler Cohen, for all I know, is very progressive. But you know what? He's in the club and he does it for money. He doesn't give a fuck. He knows where his bread is buttered and he does it. The Midas Touch brothers, those guys are all Nepo babies. Their father is a very powerful attorney in Los Angeles. And they have been able to basically parlay that because they're heavily influenced. I believe their father is heavily influential in the Democratic Party establishment. And so they have this media company that they somehow created because they all work for their father's law firm. So it's once you dig under the hood, guys, there's not too many, especially if it's the Democratic Party. Then you have that person in fucking Midas Touch, the politics girl. Why don't you dig her up and see what type of shit she's involved in and how she got to where she is? These people don't get there by accident.
It's very incestuous. It's very incestuous.
You would think Neera Tanden got to where she is because she's some spectacular Politico who knows what the fuck she's doing? Why do you think they still wheel out James Carville like he knows what the fuck's going on?
Oh, my God. Give that man the friggin' hook.
They're not going to give him the hook. He's just going to be in a box. That's when he'll get the hook. Once he's in a box.
Yeah. But what I do think, fortunately, as the Democratic Party becomes more and more obsolete. Oh, yeah. We could talk about that in a second. As the Democratic Party becomes more and more obsolete and just starts to fade away, those talking heads will also fade away. Or they'll switch their grift, but people like Carville will be dead. So like when you're talking about when the party starts, the party is going to go the way of the Whigs. They're bleeding people. They're not getting new people. I don't care who runs for what chair position. They're dead. And they should be. They stand for nothing. And I don't see how, I don't think they can be revived. So I want them to go away. And then they'll take those commentators and those packmen with them.
Here's what I would say about Cenk, and we've said this before. Cenk, 1,000%, you could call him a grifter, you could call him an opportunist, you could call him all those things. But he does have a line, and he is definitely somebody who, to his credit, is the boss. And if he makes a decision like platforming Jen, which he did on multiple occasions, that's his call. He doesn't give a fuck what the Democratic establishment thinks.
And let me tell you, his voice in regards to Israel is important.
It is. And he's been, and granted, again, he was a Russiagator. He did it all for the money. But when it comes to the truly evil people in our political system,
he's not.
He doesn't come to their defense. He's looking for the money. There's no question about it. But the difference between Cenk and a lot of people like Pacman and Brian Tyler Cohen and the Midas Touch boys, they will never, ever get out of line. Ever.
Yeah, Cenk will speak truth to power as he sees it. I don't, and I don't know. Look, I'm not a fan or not a fan. I don't care one way or the other. I don't, whatever. But I've seen him speak truth to power, and I respect that.
Listen, we've talked about Scooby and Shaggy before. They are not bad guys.
No, they're not bad guys.
They're just doing their thing. They're trying to make some money. They live out in, rural Missouri. They do a gossip channel. And yes, they defend the Democratic Party. Some people are going to defend it to the bitter end. You're not going to change that. You know what the Vanguard boys are not doing? They're not out there pushing for endless war. You let me know when they start doing that, then we'll know for sure that they're real scumbags, but they don't do that.
They're the TMZ section of what we do.
Yeah, we've had fun with them.
But they're nice.
They're not nefarious. Nice. They're not nefarious.
No.
David Pacman's nefarious. He's a bad guy, pure and simple. I do not hold back.
I think Peter should challenge him to a duel. What do you guys think?
My guns can blurt out.
What about a debate? He wouldn't debate you anyway. He wouldn't debate anybody because he couldn't.
He can't.
No, he can't. But let's say you could debate Pacman. What would you debate him on? Venezuela?
I would debate him on
Israel.
On the importance of working out and exercising and eating right every day, because he clearly just doesn't really eat too much and he doesn't really work out. I would encourage him to, take better care of himself, I guess.
Who? Pacman?
Yeah, Pacman.
He doesn't take care of him. He doesn't look like heavy.
No, he looks really thin. Like
skinny. What? Don't judge that. I really dislike when you go after physical.
No, I'm telling him that he should work out. That's what
I know. And you should mind your business about people's physicality.
All right. So I would debate him on whether or not we should be supporting Israel for a genocide.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I would debate him on whether or not there is $8 trillion worth of natural resources in Western Ukraine, and we want it. I would debate him on whether or not we should support a single-payer healthcare system, which clearly he doesn't ever advocate.
No. I don't think did he ever or not say anything about the public option at some point?
Maybe he did, but remember, when you are part of the club, you have certain talking points, and you stick to them. That's your job.
What's our next talking point?
Well, it's been a fun show, and I think we've hit some pretty good points.
Did you get it all off your chest?
I think so. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Have you had enough?
No. There's nothing in particular that I want to get off my chest. Did we?
I only wanted to address that topic because there's not a lot of good people in the populist arm of politics where there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
We need, as we say, to be marinating, because that's part of the problem. And I was very happy to see Bernie come out today against Elon and the H-1B visas. The Bernie Sanders that ran for president in 2016, he was America First. He was the original OG America First presidential candidate. And Trump stole it from him because he saw how effective it was. Well, I don't like the idea of a nation state. I think we have to have strong borders because we must protect the American worker. Yeah, that was Bernie Sanders. We need a single-payer healthcare system because the American people have a right to healthcare just like every other developed country on earth.
He realized that wasn't going to get any. Well, look, as soon as it was made clear that position wasn't going to get anywhere within the Democratic Party, there was no reason for Trump to not play it on the other side.
He saw it. He knew it. Even Steve Bannon was pushing that stuff because they get it. They know what the people want, but that doesn't necessarily mean the people are going to get it.
Who is that official People's Party?
Thank you, official People's Party. Go to bed. Jen is an hour ahead of us, Pete. Yes, it's 11 o'clock. But Jen has to eat, right? Do you have to eat?
It's funny because he knows that I do. I'll have to eat a little something.
Yeah. Too much is
I'm a
never
late
enough.
eater. I know that's not ideal, but I'm a late eater. I have a very abnormal schedule from most people.
Yeah, we all have our little faults.
I don't have a typical schedule like most people.
We are preparing for some big guests next week.
We are.
Hopefully Jamie Peck, working on that one. Working on a bunch of things. We always
You've
take
got a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah. Bernie's 2016 was a very special moment in time.
It was.
And we were cheated. It's
We were.
It's one of the reasons why I will not let go with Wasserman Schultz, because that, while she's only one part of it, she was a big part of it. And a lot of it got taken from us. And do not underestimate what ends up happening when a person who is sociopathically opportunistic, what they're willing to do to get what they want. And when somebody like that wants to not only be in the cabinet, but also be in an extremely powerful position in that cabinet, there's great lengths that people will go to get that, including fucking over millions of people, because that person believes that they're better than everybody else. That's their own shortcomings in life, whatever they may have been. You know, RFK played his cards pretty right, and he still might not get confirmed as the HHS secretary.
I think he will. I think he will.
JRB, not a chance. Not a chance. Bernie was so thoroughly cheated in 2016 in ways that I don't think people can truly understand.
I think that the point is we're arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. He was cheated both times. Do you want to talk about how lengthy the cheating process was in 2016 versus 2020? He was cheated horribly in 20, and that had a lot more to do with how it went down with Obama and all that. But
the biggest sin of Bernie Sanders, if he had a sin,
and that's important. Sisyphean task is correct. Bernie did bring me to the left and help me develop class consciousness. And that is something that was huge in this country in that first campaign.
Correct.
And
it was people really recognize important. Things that they didn't ever recognize before.
Yes. And that was important.
And that in many ways is what happens in most circumstances. If you are willing to play ball like Buttigieg and Klobuchar were willing to do. And who the fuck were they? They were never going to win anything. But
no.
They were inserted, essentially, into
we know who, by who, and we know how.
And what their rewards are. And very handsomely rewarded. As
well, Buttigieg is still, he's continuing.
The jury's not out. Jury's not out yet. Let's see if he runs.
Well, he got a nice cabinet position for 4 years. There was that. Yeah. And now they're going to, put him up to run for governor in Michigan?
Oh, please let him do it. It is a changing.
He's beyond. He's so yeah. Terrible.
No,
which is why their party is dying. They don't have anybody. Their thoughts for 28 are already, we know what they are, and none of them are worth anything.
We've had Roe on, and he's a decent guy, but you know what? He's still part of the problem. His wife trades on inside information. He doesn't do it.
Look, Roe has been on the correct side a lot of times, more often than not. I do think he's a decent person. I do.
There's not many of them in the halls of Congress, but he's one of them.
But he plays the game, and he has to in order to get anything. He's just in the system, and it is what it is. Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Sajad Nasir. Make social democracy, small businesses, owners, not fake social media, hustle culture, entrepreneur, labor union, single payer reality. We'd like to. We're working on it.
We're working on a lot.
I mean, okay, so Jamie Peck. What else you working on there, Pete?
Try to get Governor Ventura back on the show. We'll definitely have Tyrell. We'll see where that goes. We got a number of people.
He's the best voice. I love he is the best voice to me. Like, he could be every audiobook that I listen to, I'd be very content.
We're going to have a lot of activity coming up.
We have activities coming up?
No, activity.
What kind of activity? What are we doing?
Bernie's best bet and the greatest sin of his movement was that he didn't turn into Ralph Nader at the 2016 National Convention. He could have joined the Green Party, and he would have made a lasting impact on politics forever. And he would have had every right to do it. He had a mandate to do it. Everyone knew that he did. That's what he should have done. He would have changed politics forever if he did it. And in hindsight, with Trump winning anyway, he really should have fucking done it. Because as you said, there was big change that was coming one way or the other. And he did.
Oh, it's happening.
Indeed.
It's happening. Get Jesse
Jett.
You think I'm thinking about arts and crafts? I'm usually thinking about stuff like that. I'm often thinking about arts and crafts. Yeah, I have a project I'm working on right now. I just got myself a wood burning kit. I'm very excited.
That sounds nice.
I know.
So, and one more from Sajid. Thank you so much. Which state has a better Sajid. I apologize. Which state has a better chance of turning blue? Texas or Florida? And Pete, run for pedo Gates seat. You can win. I'm not running for Congress. Not right now, anyway. And I don't. Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement, but we'll see what happens.
Texas or Florida turning blue?
Texas, 1,000%.
Yeah, Florida is just going the other direction. I feel like we're going the inverse direction. We're not heading blue. We're getting redder.
Yeah, the reason why,
because the blue here is so pathetic that there's no better option. Because otherwise, I don't think it would necessarily be that red here.
Probably not. But then again, I don't think, even though Texas was heading in a trajectory that was looking like a potentially purple state, the closest it got was the 3-point margin that Ted Cruz was able to skip by Robert Francis O'Rourke. Let's stop calling him Beto. I think that would be nice. Let's stop calling him that.
Francis O'Rourke.
Talk about cultural appropriation of the worst kind. The thing about
somebody who's now vanished into thin air, which is going to go the way that's how Kamala, they're all going to be that.
It all depends on the state structure in many ways, because Austin, Texas, in many ways has become Atlanta, Georgia, in the sense that you get a lot of people from very left-leaning areas, especially.
And the traffic is horrendous. I think those are very good analogies. Atlanta and Austin both have horrendous traffic.
And so the more Austin expands into a metro area, much like, listen, Atlanta Metro is the biggest metro in the country outside of New York City. And so as a result, Georgia has essentially turned into a swing state, you would say. A lot is going to be determined on what's going to happen in Jon Ossoff's upcoming election. And I do think Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to run for the Senate at some point. I think that that's a very strong possibility. If that can flip, then it was all just, it was all false. Of course, AOC has plans, TM. That's obvious. But as far as Texas
I just don't see her winning a statewide race.
Any intention,
AOC winning, I don't see her going any bigger than her district that she's in now.
Any intention of Texas becoming a flippable state, that was put to bed completely this election. Trump won Texas by 14 points.
That's it.
That's the end. That's it. That's another decade plus of try. You had like 3 rungs on the ladder to go. Now you just got knocked down to rung 17. So you've got to climb up like all over again. And you fucked up. But I think the Democratic Party fucks up on purpose.
I just don't think they care.
No, not at all. Do I think they care? Yeah, they care after they get paid.
And there's Democratic pockets in Texas, just like, well, I don't even really think there are in Florida, to be honest with you, because even what people would look at our state and look at where the so-called blue pockets are, with the exception of maybe part of Central Florida, there's really not a lot. Like our blue here is still center right. Like it's not a normal blue. Whereas in Texas, there are pockets that are blue.
Yeah. No, there's no question that Southeast Florida is in big trouble. And AOC has built an infrastructure, TM, but I'm telling you, she doesn't have it.
And here's the problem is, where is her infrastructure?
Correct.
You know, I have spent an inordinate amount of time for somebody from South Florida in Western New York, in the Finger Lakes region, Buffalo, Rochester. I've been to Oswego. I've Syracuse. I've been all through New York. And her appeal, I just don't see in those types of places. And that's a big problem.
She also comes off as somebody who has definitely crossed over. And once that happens, it's almost impossible to get it back.
Well, so on one hand, she won't get the progressives.
Correct.
And on the other hand, she won't get people that are more conservative or
It's
central.
too much of a lightning rod.
Yeah.
And that's the decision. She didn't have to be. Just like I pointed out, I said, I said to Jen, I said on the show recently, I think that the moment where I really thought that AOC just completely lost the plot was when Marjorie Taylor Greene called out Jasmine Crockett and AOC decided to interject herself into that conversation where she had no business being involved.
Well, she had to be the savior.
Yeah.
She had to step in for Jasmine, as if Jasmine couldn't stand
So
up for herself.
So when I saw that, I just thought, yeah, she doesn't, her political instincts are actually really shitty. And she may think that she's sharp. Yeah, she's attractive. You know, she can draw a crowd. There's no question that she's got some it factor. But in terms of the it factor, in terms of the political dynamicism that you really need, it's not there. She doesn't have it. I think that Richie Torres is going to run for governor of New York. So he's going to leave that seat, and Jamal Bowman may very well pick it up. That's what I think is going to happen. Oh
my God, you really think Richie Torres is going to run for governor?
Oh yeah, that's in the works now. That's pretty.
Oh
sure.
My God,
well,
I cannot stand that man.
Well, because Hochul is she's like a sitting duck. She has like a 34% approval rating.
Okay, but here's the thing, and no, I swear, no offense to New Yorkers, him being the governor of New York gets him out of Congress.
Oh, no. Listen,
so I don't entirely hate that, but
Richie, please run for governor of New York. You'll do great. You'll be swell. You'll be great. Yeah.
You'll be so good. Yeah. No, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But also, and this is something that I think is, again, we've talked about it regarding what people should and shouldn't run for. And I think that like people just assume that all of these sort of elected positions are interchangeable, that they're all the same thing. And they're really not. So the fact that somebody who
that's so not surprising.
That makes sense. But yeah, now see, I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. That was too
and
good.
Now I don't remember what I was saying. And now you're going to miss out on morsels of my brilliance.
Well,
yeah, but don't interrupt a train of thought. That's what happened.
What were you talking about?
I don't even remember.
Come on.
Try. No, I'm serious. I can't even remember.
You really can't remember?
No. It seemed important, but it might not be. If it's really important, it'll come back to me. That's what I have learned. What I have learned.
What I've also learned is that we are.
This is what I was saying. Don't interrupt me again. Okay. Is that all positions are not interchangeable. So somebody who is in a legislative branch position, who is in the People's House, who is a legislator, is not the same person, characteristic, necessarily has the same set of qualifications and skill sets as somebody running an executive branch. Those are very, very different positions and require very different skill sets, which is why we often see that presidents were governors. That's the same skill set. I think that people really don't understand. They think, oh, well, you ran for this, run for that. So the idea that somebody thinks that, oh, just being a congressperson makes you automatically like you just should run for government. I don't see that at all as a connection.
Yep.
Senator, yes. You go from like, it makes sense to me to go from being a congressperson to being a senator because you're still in the legislative body. It's still the same premise. But what makes somebody who was a congressperson necessarily qualified to be the chief executive officer of the state? I don't know.
I think Alex's best move, if she really wants to jump up to another spot, would be the mayor of New York City. That's her best bet.
She won't do that. She would look at that as a downsize.
But I think she could win that, and that is not a downsize by any
But
stretch.
she would look at it as a downsize.
Well, she's unfortunately way too egotistical.
And I also, by the way, what I just said still applies. I personally do not see how Alex is qualified to be a mayor. Just because you're a legislator doesn't mean you're good at being.
I don't forget that. I don't know why anybody thinks that Alex is capable of running for president of the United States.
Again, another executive position. These are very different positions. I don't see her as being capable of running New York City. I don't see that at all. That's a completely executive. That's a completely executive function. I find it very interesting that people think all positions are interchangeable. No, the work and the skill set that required of a mayor and the skill set required of a legislator are very different things. You don't necessarily need to have management experience and staffing experience and personnel experience to be a legislator. It should be a variety of different people from all walks of life. That's the people's house. That's what I think. It should be everybody, but not everybody is qualified to be a chief executive. No. That is a very specific role. You need to have staff experience, management experience, and it's not just a matter of being a pretty face in front of a camera at that point. You really actually have to have executive experience.
I've been saying this, and I'll say it again, because if anybody still really cares about the democratic process and the Democratic Party, the only person that I could see realistically that could win the presidency in 28 right now is Andy Bashir. He's the only one. Because I think he's got pretty good chops. I think the fact that he is the governor of Kentucky speaks in great deal about the fact that Kentucky technically is a Rust Belt state and that he has the sort of upper Midwest kind of appeal. He doesn't come off like a piece of shit. In fact, he's actually fairly progressive in a lot of ways in a state that is still run by Mitch McConnell, although hopefully not for much longer. And if I have anything to say about that, I will be there way past my death. I'll handpick my successor. I certainly hope he doesn't get that chance. But yeah, was Eric Adams capable? No.
No.
These people are jokes.
Yeah, no. I'm not suggesting that the current people in those executive positions are good by any stretch. I'm just saying that we're talking about very completely different positions. It's not like, normally when people, move onward, they kind of, these are it's apples and oranges is my point.
Yeah. There is the only real option that you have, because the party in many ways is just, Bashir has been very smart about his political alchemy, because from where he stands, he had an opportunity to kind of put himself out there and he didn't. Shapiro made it obvious. Pritzker has made it obvious. Whitmer has made it obvious.
She's another one.
And of course,
Newsom.
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 The gruesome Newsom has made it as obvious as anybody. And he'll be the first. I think he'll be, you know what? I'm not sure. Part of me says that he'll be the first one to make an announcement after the midterms, but we'll see.
A lot can happen in 2 years.
A lot can happen in 2 years. What I do know is that this type of stuff doesn't interest me anymore. It doesn't mean that elected office isn't appealing, but the whole horse race stuff, it's not going to get us health care.
No, it's not.
Wage. It's not going to end the wars, and it's not going to save this planet from being on fire. What we need is a labor movement / revolution, because that's where we're at now. The system is broken. How do we repair it? How do we make it new? That's it. That's where we're at.
So, guys, we have Monday we're not sure yet, right? But we will be at 9.
And Thursday, we will be at 7.
Eastern time, which is 6 Peter time.
6. Dinner time. Early dinner time. But I'll make
you eat so many meals. What difference does it make?
Sean Fain is one of the only good people in politics.
I like Sean Fain for sure.
And the best part about Sean Fain is that he made Elon Musk show his whole ass. That was worth the price of admission alone. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. We're so appreciative that you're all with us on this journey. We are trying to transform politics into service, but we are growing steadily but mightily. Make sure that you are, if not already, either a YouTube member.
Did you see that we had a new patron tonight? Did you notice?
I did not notice.
I will tell you who it was. Hold on a second. It was, hold on. It's at the end of this.
So I have to wait to see the entire thing scroll because the $5 ones have stacked up. But every dollar counts.
But it's a new person and I can't remember. It begins with a C.
Charlie.
No, it's a woman.
Oh, it's a woman. Oh,
No. That's it right there. Kathleen Corey.
Kathleen Corey, thank you so much. And we do have a handful of new. Steve, I do think that Sherrod is going to run for the Senate seat again in Ohio. I do think he's going to run for that seat because it's going to be open. So I think that that's what he's going to do. We'll see.
Are you done doing predictions? That would be a good series for you. Political predictions with Pete.
Thank you, JRB. We're very happy to have you here.
Yeah. We could almost do it like how you do your fantasy football league. We could do it with like, who's running.
Da, 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 da.
I'm not with you. I'm not with you. I'm not with that.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Go Irish. We'll see you Monday.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.